We have some breaking news. What is this?
Good evening, my fellow hogs. This is an address from your Vice President of Slop. Yesterday evening at 2000 Eastern Standard Time, on the orders of Sam Presti, an operation was carried out by the Oklahoma City Thunder to strike and compromise to a permanent end my tuxedo bit. I am coming before you tonight with a message. For as I sit here before you, I am completely and utterly defeated. I risked it all on what I believed in my heart of hearts was correct, was a justified cause. And as I look out over the faces in chat of all of you, I still believe, even in this defeat, that my cause is correct and is justified. The arc of history is long indeed, and there comes a time in every man's life when he realizes the world he lives in will not be the one that he dreamt of. Dreams, once so concrete and tangible before our eyes when we were young, blur and fade. The effervescent dream can be seen on the horizon, but it is out of reach. It will be realized by someone, but they will not be you. This can drive a man to the worst place of all, despair. Despair is a place where nothing is possible and all ends, including that dream that you could see for yourself. Despair is to banish what you saw there before the horizon, that precious dream. And to despair is to well and truly kill it. Hogs, I don't believe in despair. I believe in failure. I believe in rejection, in losing, embarrassment, dejection, pain, struggle. But I do not believe in despair. My dream is out there, on the horizon. One day, one of you will pay over $1,000 in garment rentals. Taste victory. That one day when you will see the sun rise on the horizon where you were proven correct, that your dream is not on the horizon, but hold in your hands. This, my friends, that you are looking on is the tuxedo of defeat. But it is not the tuxedo of despair. It is a tuxedo of hope. And right now, in its final moments, it is calling in your dream. Chase it. And even if you fail, do not despair, for someday the world will be filled with realized dreams that suit us all. Thank you.
Chills. Absolute chills. Round of applause, everyone. Honestly, I think I'm going to cut that clip and I'm going to send it to friend of the podcast, Jalen Williams, so that he can prepare for his Hall of Fame speech in 2045. I think that will be a really good way to train him.
Can you ask him to teach me how to tie a bow tie? Because I was late because I couldn't figure it out. So
I also have no idea how to do that.
I tried so hard, man.
I don't even know how to tie a regular tie, if you could believe that. Every time I go to some event that I have to wear a formal tie for, I have to have someone else do it for me. So, and I've only worn a tie probably 4 times in my whole life. So
I can tie a regular tie. A bow tie is just beyond me. I also couldn't find my cufflinks, so these are just jammed in here. So it's really bad. It's tough. But
great way to start things off here on the we don't have to talk about the NBA finals. Let's be honest. Other podcasts are doing that better than we will.
We also don't want to do it. No, I don't want to do it.
We've also talked about it a ton. We talked about, if you listen to the Patreon episode, we basically laid out what it means for both teams if they win. So you have an idea of kind of how we think about that anyway. And then on top of that, the Halliburton injury is just such a different wrinkle that has been added to this whole thing that will actually affect not only this season, but next season as well, and what happens with the Pacers and other teams this offseason potentially. So we'll talk about all that stuff this offseason at some point, but congratulations to the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Congratulations. I hope you choke on it. I hope it's bitter in your mouth. Anyway, sorry.
RIP to one of the greatest ongoing bits in the history of ball. Honestly, we had several years.
They can't win 2 in a row. Second round, we'll be back next season. I'm starting saving right now. I'm going to find a way to pay for this out of my HSA. It's because it is health related. It's mental health related.
Keep raising that bar. Keep raising the rent.
So round 2 next year. No defending champ has got past round 2 in the last few years.
There you go. New narrative. You could invest in that. But if you believe in it so much, similar to your tuxedo investment. Why don't you make an investment against the Thunder next year with your money to prove that you have no belief
I don't believe in gambling. I wouldn't just throw my money away. Why would I do that? No
reward?
No, I would never just throw my money away. Like, this is a point of pride.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Absolutely unbelievable. All right, Maxwell, I've added you to the stage. If it did not,
I'm going to go change because it's 98 degrees.
Yeah, go change. Yeah, let's let Sam change. Let's let Maxwell, I have added you to the stage. There we go. Chuck should be joining us at some point as well. Maxwell, looks like you're muted.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. How you doing?
Awesome. I'm great. I told a bunch of normal people in my life that I was going on a really cool basketball podcast today.
Nice.
They're going to tune in and they're going to hear whatever that was. So that's great.
Well, the good news is that you don't have to promote your ball appearances as the biggest podcast that you're going on anymore, because you were on the Ringer Draft Show earlier this year with Kyle Mann. So we're in second place, and we're happy to be in second place of the Ringer Draft Show. So, but this is obviously one of our favorite annual podcasts, so we appreciate you coming back on.
For sure. I appreciate you guys having me. Like, I love the show so much. I love Chuck so much. I tried to schedule like 8 different podcasts with Chuck throughout the year, and like none of them managed to happen. So
he's a busy man. It is tough to nail down Chuck. Yeah.
So I'm super excited to be here and very excited to talk draft and very excited to talk about some of the weird, interesting guys in this class and hear kind of where you guys are at. Cause I think I think it was actually J. Man that said it. Like, sometimes you like paint, you're too close to the painting and you need to kind of like step away for a little bit and like see that outside perspective. And I always appreciate that.
You know, what's really funny is that I feel like this is how the draft cycle works. Everyone hypes up a draft class and they go, well, next year's draft is loaded with talent. Last year, everyone was saying this when we were shitting on the last draft. Last draft was kind of an outlier in that people hated that draft class. They didn't think that it was going to be anything special. So they looked at this year and they said, well, this year's got, you got 3 guys that could be number 1 overall picks in some drafts with Cooper Flagg reclassifying, and it's got depth and it's got all of these good role players and blah, 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 blah. And then we get around to about a month before the draft, and everyone goes, I think this class kind of sucks, actually.
Yeah, if I can be a Debbie Downer, I started on 2026 because we're doing like an early 2026 mock this year, and I already feel that way about 2026. Like, AJ, Cam, and Boozer are sick, and I like Michael Brown. But like, I was watching guys in like the RSCI top 20, and I was just like, oh no. Like, it gets
what's gonna happen
already we're fading 2026 right now outside of the top 3. The top 3 are sick. That Darren Peterson is like if Miles Bird was actually good, and I say that as like a big Miles Bird fan. Like, he is like the fully realized version of what I want Miles Bird to be. He rocks.
Sure.
Boozer's awesome.
What the spreadsheets say that Miles Bird could be.
Yeah, exactly. I like Miles Bird. I still kept Miles Bird top 20 the whole year because he takes a lot of threes and he does stuff on defense. So it's probably just going to work out, even if he does not finish at the rim or actually make his threes or gets bumped around a lot. Outside of that, he's great. So I'm going to have Miles Bird top 20 again next year since the 20.
Go Maxwell. That's why you're my guy. Because this is what I wanted to hear. I knew you were a fellow Birdman. We're going to be back.
We're 5 minutes into the podcast. Season. We can't talk about a guy who's not in the draft.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Boston Celtic next year, him and Yaxel. Both bad. I was devastated.
I love
It
Yaxel.
really killed me that Yaxel and Burt and Miles both went. Probably the right decision for both of those guys, but bummed me out.
Yaxel's going to make so much money at Michigan that it's like
He's
it's
making
very
$3
rare.
million or something like that, right?
Yeah, probably at least. It sounds like.
Yeah.
Which
So that's
how do
more
you
than
turn
he
that
would have
down?
made in the NBA as a rookie. So I understand why he made the decision. Yeah. But let's start. All right, we've already. I hate to be that podcast, but I mean, have we not done flagging Harper to death at this point? We do have some new news. Obviously, this was originally a Sixers podcast. We have to talk about the VJ Edgecombe news that came out today. So most fan bases would not be affected by this news even remotely. Most fan bases would be like, whatever, guys sometimes, have weird workouts. And if you actually zoom out and you look at Daryl Morey's approach to drafting, he's talked about this on the record before. He literally went on Bill Simmons' podcast during Book of Basketball 2.0. And he talked about how draft workouts matter, but only if the bigger picture is affected by it. So for example, like if you get a guy in and he is like Igor Demin in this class and he's nailing all of his threes, that doesn't really mean anything if he's not making them in his games, right? VJ Edgecombe is kind of having the opposite thing that we're hearing right now, which is basically that he's a guy who made, 35% of his threes, 36% of his threes off the catch this year, which was a question mark coming into the year. He was like an 80% free throw shooter. He's displayed touch from the line and from three, not quite as much on layups and on floaters and on mid-range stuff, but he has shown some shooting ability. And the report that we get today from Jonathan Gavoni in his mock draft is that he seemed nervous during his workout, which already Sixers fans are starting to have a little bit of PTSD from Markelle Fultz. And 2, he apparently didn't shoot that well in the workouts as well. Now, I went back and I looked at his combine numbers a week ago just to see what does he shoot like in an open gym. And he made over 50% of his shots. He was like 20 of 30 on off the dribble pull-up mid-rangers, and then he was something like in like 45% from three, I think, on his threes at the combine. So when they did both drills, so a reasonable amount of threes made for someone in his archetype, knowing what we know about his shooting ability. And I know, Maxwell, you've been someone who's been higher on VJ throughout the process. It feels like, I feel like most people have kind of come around to VJ as being the third or fourth best guy in this class in the last few weeks, I would say. But I feel like listening to you throughout the year, because I knew the Sixers might have a pick up high in this draft, I felt like you were someone who was higher on him. So 1, does this news affect anything for you? And 2, why are you so high on VJ in general?
Yeah, so I think I'll start with the like being high on him in general thing. I think when you just look at this archetype, it's always valuable. Like Chuck, to steal his phrase before he gets here, and knows that I'm doing it. Nobody tell him I'm doing it. The switchblade guard is like exceedingly valuable. Like playoff teams always want these guys. They want to acquire them. A lot of times they have them. Like guards who can just do the non-guard stuff, rebound, block shots, get in passing lanes, whatever. Like it's really valuable. And that's what VJ does. When you look at a lot of these guys, they were all sort of guys who came around late. Like they're all multi-year college guards, like Caruso, Josh Hart, like a guy like Nickeil Alexander-Walker was a guy who like took a while to find his footing in the league. It's rare for one to be as good as a freshman as VJ Edgecombe was. And I think that like in and of itself, paired with the athletic traits, the positive work ethic, the overall production, the fact that he got better at shooting throughout the year. Like he wasn't one of those guys who shot well against like incarnate Word and then couldn't make one against Kansas State. Like he made shots against the real teams. Right. I think that matters. Like I just think he's a very good player in a valuable archetype who is way better than most of those guys are when they're young.
That's the big thing for me. And I've literally not word for word said what you said, but my whole thing on this has been, it feels like there are a few guys in this draft where it feels like even the fans of them are a little bit hesitant to talk about their upside in a way that is anything more than like a good role player or a very good role player. I think VJ is one of the guys that fits in that box, But having been just a Sixers fan, a draft fan for, going on 20 years now, I feel like every time me and Sam first talked about VJ Edgecombe in the fall, and it was when he was shooting terribly. And I remember saying, I can't get into a guard who has a shaky shot and is just like an athletic, toolsy idea guy until I see something more from him, because I've been bit by this archetype over and over and over and over again. Having said that, he showed for stretches this year that he can shoot, and he also affected the game in a way that most of these guys don't. You talked about all of like kind of the dirty work stuff, the steal and block rates, the rebounding, getting in passing lanes, all of that stuff, pushing it in transition. Really the only concern that I've had from him is the half court finishing and even some of the transition finishing when he isn't dunking. And just before we get to that, the thing that I went back and I looked at all the guys that he gets comped to. So like I'm not talking about like Suggs. I'm not talking about like Caruso. I'm not talking about Case and Wallace. I'm talking about like the higher end outcomes.
Donovan Mitchell and like those kind of guys.
Less. I tried to do less Anthony Edwards and Donovan Mitchell just because as shot creators, it feels like they probably are at a level that VJ is unlikely to get to as a main option. Number one option is my thing. Because both of those guys at the end of the day are top 15 players in the NBA that are number one options. But I looked at guys that I view more in the second or third option tier that were, when they were coming out of college, like Drew Holiday, Andre Iguodala. Obviously he's much smaller than Andre Iguodala, but I've heard people say like a mini Iggy was a comp that he's gotten before. And then Victor Oladipo, which is the most popular one. I understand why. And there were varying levels of VJ is better than them almost at everything except for maybe one thing. For example, like Victor Oladipo was incredibly efficient from 2-point percentage in college, but he also played his first 2 years as like an off-ball cutter type. He wasn't a guy that ran a ton of offense. It was his third year when he was 21 years old where he really broke out. VJ is not even 20 yet. So long story short on this, if Daryl Morey is making this pick at 3, he's thinking those outcomes. I don't think he's thinking this is a guy that we're going to take and he's going to be like a nice 4th or 5th starter for us. I think he's taking this thinking we're going to get a guy who's going to give us value on his rookie contract. And then in 5 years from now, we might be looking at a guy that's like maybe not an all-star level player, but gives us all-star level impact. And that's just my general idea, is that if we do take him at 3, I don't think that he has in mind that VJ is going to be just a traditional quote-unquote role player. I think that he's viewing it as this is a long-term vet on VJ's work ethic, the fact that he was incredibly productive as a freshman, he has all the athletic gifts, he showed shooting, which a lot of these guys don't do, and then long-term we might be able to make him into a 2nd, 3rd, or maybe even like an elite 4th guy on our team.
Yeah, and I think that's totally reasonable. So one of the things I like to do is I keep spreadsheet data from pre-draft seasons of guys who've earned like multiple contracts in the league, just to like set a bar as far as like compared to the guys that actually play in the league, like where do they stack up? So keep in mind, this is as a freshman, Edgecombe ranked 81st percentile above in BPM, OBPM, DBPM, which like, if we're just zooming out, like big picture, BPM is probably like one of the cleanest things for a young player when it's like at that high of a level. But he was also there in assist to turnover ratio, steal rate, rim pressure, and dunks. So like, that stuff is really important, and to be that good at it at such a young age matters quite a bit. Now, you mentioned the rim finishing earlier. Where I'm sort of encouraged is I mentioned the rim pressure. VJ put a ton of pressure on the ring for a guy who like, I basically put him in like the 2 position group for that exercise. He gets to the rim a lot more than those guys. So just in general, you're looking at some sort of trade-off typically between like rim pressure and rim efficiency, generally speaking. But the other thing I will say that's really encouraging is it's shockingly normal for guys who are really athletic to be bad rim finishers when they're
that young, is something
which
that
is like
people don't talk
normal,
about. No,
but
I know.
It seems wrong. But like, I think like Amen Thompson made like 45% of his half-court rim attempts. I think Amen did too.
Okay,
like if I'm not mistaken, like both of them were terrible.
Very funny. I found an article that was written by current Sixer scout Coach Spins, formerly of the Game Theory podcast, which is talking about this exact thing from 2 years ago, which was basically, and he talked about a SAR in this article. You
Okay.
might be right. I think both of them coming out.
Yeah, I'm pulling up a men right now. So a men half court at the rim. Oh, why is
Because
OTE
I know
click
for a
interface
fact that
so
this
weird?
was, I know for a fact that Asar was shooting like 40% on non-dunk attempts in the
Okay.
half court.
So a men was better, but a men was 50% on half court layups.
Yeah. Which is around
Against
what
children.
VJ is. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Against much worse competition than what VJ
and
is.
now because of current college basketball rules, VJ Edgecombe is playing against 27-year-olds in the Big 12.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of the thing that I feel like is being under discussed, is that these hyper athlete guys who are used to just dunking everything at lower levels are readjusting for competition levels where they can't just dominate everyone, and they are able to basically they have to adjust on the fly. And one of the things you would see a lot in VJ when you watch him, and actually No Ceilings did a great video on this recently. I think it was Tyler did one, which was basically that a lot of the times it comes down to where VJ was taking off from.
His takeoff points are rough. Yeah.
His takeoff points were way too far away. He was getting off balance. He wasn't taking an extra step in gathering and going from handle and transferring to layup, which, if you want to have a Sixers, like a negative Sixers comparison point for that, if you're looking at that, someone who struggled with that and never figured it out for the Sixers was DeAnthony Melton, specifically after he injured his back, where he just didn't have the vertical lift and his handle was shaky. So he would lose the ball a lot in between the transfer. He would miss a lot of layups in the open court. He would miss a lot of layups in the half court. But the hope with VJ is that he can figure out, like, that is it feels like such an easy thing to figure out. Like I remember Brandon Miller shot like 45% at the rim in the half court.
He couldn't really get there either.
And he could never get there. And when he did, he could never finish. But finishing is something that guys, as they adjust to their bodies, as they adjust to levels of athleticism that they are facing, is something that guys regularly improve on. And I feel like it is not talked about all that much.
Yeah, I think unless the frame is like disastrously bad, like I think that's usually where you run into trouble. Or like even like in Brandon Miller's case, it was just he was always a guy who was easy to bump because of his body type. And like look at Ace Bailey this year, that's another guy too, just like doesn't get to the rim. And it's like, yeah, if you just like put your chest on him, he has to pick up his dribble.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's Sam was laughing at the phrasing. I see it in the chat right now as well.
I'm just saying.
Sometimes
I was under the
stuff.
impression. Look, I've been taught my entire life. I'm getting mixed signals because I've been told my entire life that like finishing is bad. So
sure, of course, you know. Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah,
I'm turned around a little. Look, I'm just gonna say. So another thing that I'm concerned about with VJ, just to kind of get back to the disaster workout that supposedly happened.
No, hold on. The disaster workout, quote unquote, for Sixers fans. Continue.
Well, this is what I'm saying is that you have to treat Sixers fans like rabid like coyotes. So like where like they're scared of like if they see you being scared, they're going to be scared.
Of course.
So I think one of the things VJ needs to work on if he's going to play in Philadelphia is getting his like jersey up over his head and making himself big.
Okay.
So to kind of like intimidate the Sixers fans to kind of like
to be fair,
leave him alone.
He does play bigger than his size. We talked about that. I'm also I mean,
well, that's something I want to ask Maxwell. Are you familiar with Trill and I have been discussing what I call the VJ sizing predicament, where VJ seems to grow and shrink depending on like what game he is playing in. Like there are some games where I look at him and I'm like, oh, so he might be like 6'2", and then I'll see another game and he like looks like Amen sized. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how big is he?
He has like changed his body a lot over the past year. So that was like the thing that freaked me out about him like prior to the year, was that I thought he looked really, really tiny in the high school tape. And like, even by the time he got to like the Bahamas, like Olympic stuff, it was like, okay, he looks a little better, like physically. And I do think he filled that, but you're right. Like, I think like depending on the matchup, he just has this weird frame where like sometimes he looks enormous. But yeah, it's like 193 with like a 6'7" wingspan. It's like he's not terribly sized for a guy coming to into the league at that
I was going to say, the only issue it seems to be is that outside of Drew Holiday and Derek White, who are two guys that he regularly has at least similar skill sets, somewhat. He actually said at the Combine that those were two of the players that he likes to watch the most and molds his game after Drew Holiday and Derek White, if you're thinking about, once again, when we talk about like the idea of what he could potentially become in the NBA, like Derek White, for example, would be like, they'd be like, he's like the fourth best player on the Celtics, but it's like, yeah, but his impact in his role is like he's a star in his role, and that's the idea that you're trying to get at here with VJ is like, if you are drafting him and he doesn't even hit the highest end outcome possible, the Victor Oladipo makes an all-star game, and then if he doesn't get injured, maybe makes more all-star games than is a star wing, then you might have that Derek White level outcome where he impacts a game at a high level as well. But outside of those two guys, a lot of the guys that he does get compared to are much bigger than him. Like the guys like Anthony Edwards and Victor Oladipo, like even in college, they were like 200 pounds and up. So I do wonder how much that, I know that Chuck, when he gets here, I'm sure he'll talk about it. But one of the things that Chuck has talked about when we had a conversation off air was that he was like, I just don't know if VJ is quite big enough to be the player that, people are projecting him to be. Like, do you think that he can guard, like, you think he's going to guard 1 through 3 in the NBA, or is it 1s
Not
and
initially.
2s?
Like it's if that happens, that's probably something that happens on contract number 2, as opposed to contract number 1. Like, I think, could he get his body there? Yes. But then I don't know, with like the super athletic guys too, there's also the trade-off of like, how much do you want him to put on? Like, is that going to take something away somewhere else? Like, I'm a big, like, guys get bigger and stronger guy. Like, I think it does just generally happen. And I think VJ has a good frame for it. He's gotten a lot bigger over the last year or so. But I don't know that he's ever going to be like a 1 through 3 defender as much as like a 2s and 1s defender.
Fair.
That was what I was going to ask, is like how strong, because it's so weird. Some of these guys, like, who are strong don't even necessarily like look strong. Like, you know what I'm saying? I think of like James Harden as being like one of these like functional strength guys where like he doesn't even like look very strong, but he's just such a bowling ball. Grant Williams kind of like, quite frankly, like looks a little chunky, but is like superhumanly strong.
Yeah.
Like, and I wonder, I feel like that's like one of the things with like guarding up that's like so important. Like, I think that, again, everyone get out your bingo cards. Marcus Smart has like been able to do is like, I've seen people
comp VJ to like a Smart variant, not a 1-for-1 by any means, because Smart was obviously, especially in college, was much more on the ball.
Yeah.
But
for sure. Yeah.
But like similar general, the general idea is in that kind of Boston Celtics trio of defensive guards from the last few years.
So I just went into a physical comparison tool that I use that Wizzy on Twitter made, and Derek White was like 95%.
I know, because that's
why
I always bring him up, because I've used that as well. Because I was like, when Chuck was expressing those concerns to me, Derek White was the guy that I kept going back to, that I was like, oh my God, they have like the same standing reach, I think they have the same wingspan. Like almost identical 1-for-1 as physical comps coming out as prospects. So if you are thinking long term for VJ, this is the mold of kind of player or guard. But we've also talked about the fact that in the past, I remember when we traded Jaden Springer away, because I liked the swing on Jaden at the time of the draft, just because end of the first round, Morey tends to take upside swings no matter where he is in the draft, unless it's the second round. If he's in the first round and he thinks it's a guy that could be a long-term project, that, he's just going to take the guy he thinks has the best long-term outcome. That's how we ended up getting Tyrese Maxey. That's how we drafted Jared McCain last year. These are the kind of moves that he tends to make. I remember when we traded away Jaden Springer, I did a list of guards in the NBA who were better on defense than offense that started for teams. And it's not a long list, to be honest with you. It's like a very short list of like Jalen Suggs, at the time, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Derek White, Drew Holiday, Marcus Smart. Like, I would say there's probably 5 to 10 of these guys in general. So I guess my question for you is, I know VJ actually had, like you said, some of the advanced numbers offensively were better than I anticipated. Like you just said, the OBPM, I think, was one of them. Was like very good considering his role. And like, he wasn't the most efficient scoring guard. He wasn't a guy who got a ton of assists, but he got a decent amount of assists for his archetype. Like his passing and his shooting is better at his age for these athletic, quote unquote, raw type guys that you think coming out of this podcast is just littered with things that I probably shouldn't be saying. But the long story short, draft talk, it gets you
in trouble.
It gets you all tangled sometimes. But the reason I say this is like, do you think there is a long-term potential outcome where VJ is just as good on offense as he is on defense? And if he isn't, do you still think that he's a starter level player is what I'm trying to get at?
Yes. I think yes to both. So where I am much more encouraged about VJ relative to a guy like Jaden Springer is I shouldn't say that Springer was like an overrated processor, but I thought that there was a pretty big execution difference between him and VJ. Like there's this Jaden Springer pass that like lives in my head where he was like driving, I believe, from the slot and he was either driving from the slot and found the weak side corner or coming from a corner and kicking it to the opposite side slot. Where like he saw the pass and he tried to throw it and it ended up being a bounce pass. And like it very much did not mean to be a bounce pass.
Yeah.
Where like that type of stuff just like doesn't happen with VJ. Like VJ's execution as a passer is really spot on. It's really sharp and it's really good just like from a pure spot up too. And he also took like over twice as many threes per 100 as Jaden Springer.
Sure.
I really just buy the shot to a degree with VJ too. Like we talked about the combine earlier. The talk out of the combine was that his shot was looking more functional there, that it had like a little bit more arc on it, that it was less flat. So maybe he did have a bad workout. I don't know. It could also be smoke. Like it's tough to know at this time of year what's what anyway.
I'm wondering, by the way, just a quick thing on that. There are a lot of agendas out there from not only agents and other players that want to get drafted with the third pick in the draft that might leak a story like that. But there's also like, there have been stories that the Sixers front office is split on what to do with this pick. And there might be one side of the front office that's saying we should just take Ace Bailey, we should trade back, we should do whatever. And they feel like they might not get their way. So they want to get out ahead of this in case in the future, if, let's say, for example, one of the guys that they pass on ends up hitting and he's going to interview, let's say it's a front office person that's going to interview for another job, they can say, I tried to get ahead of that. And I tried to, like, there really is like levels to this. So I do think that you have to keep that in mind. Yeah, I could just say Elton Brand. But anyway, that is my guess, that it's someone that is in the Sixers front. It's either one of those two things. It's someone behind them who wants their guy to get drafted at 3 and wants that story out there, or 2, it's someone in the organization that thinks that they should pick someone else or trade back, and they want to have that on the record in case in the future that they try to get another job. So yeah, long story short, but
I do just buy VJ's like offensive output. Like the assist to turnover was really, really strong this year, and his turnover rate itself was good for a guy who like doesn't have a great handle and probably took on more of a playmaking burden than you would like him to, given the limitations of the handle.
Sure.
And the assist rate's really good. Like he has a good view of the floor. I thought as the year went on too, he was a better snap decision maker. Like he was very good about like, this is the area of the floor I'm driving on. Here comes the help. I'm punishing the help. Like he was having to use his handle less, it felt like, as the year went on, which like ideally you'd be like, no, he's got like a great counter bag. It's totally fine. But the fact that he was at least avoiding getting into areas that get him into trouble is encouraging. So I do think he's one of the guys, like, I know you never want to count on handle development, but
that's the question that I was going to ask you about.
I think the fact that he's going to get to start playing from the second side of the floor, if he is in Philly, is encouraging because he's not going to have to do as much with it.
Sure.
Whereas if you put him on a team like Washington, like they might legit be like, you're the only guy that can get to the basket. Go do it. Like
it might look like
be really bad.
Jalen Suggs rookie season, which we talk about all the time, where it's like people forget how bad Jalen Suggs was on offense as a rookie because he was overtasked in a role that he was not built for as a rookie, and he was still figuring it out. And then in his second year, they get Paulo. He doesn't have to do as much, and he slowly develops into the player that he's become now, which is like a very good two-way player. That's obviously still better on defense, but these are the kind of guys that he generally gets comped to. Guys that might struggle a little bit offensively at the beginning as they're figuring it out, and then as the year goes on, as the years pass, they tend to refine their game. And the decision making, I totally agree with you. One of the things we talked about is the fact that when you watch VJ a lot is that he hits those lobs to guys in the dunker spot a ton on Baylor this year. He was able to drive and make. It felt like sometimes he would get himself in trouble. We talked about the decision making with the leaping. Sometimes he would drive without a plan a lot, it felt like. But like you said, I felt like as the year went on, he got better at that. And we do at least have a small sample of him playing in the Bahamas with other pro level players, playing in a role that's similar to what he will play on the Sixers, where he's playing off of these guys with, like, I know Chuck said like he didn't think that was necessarily like pro level anything in those clips, but I felt like the paint was way more vacated than when I watched a Baylor game. Like the Baylor games, it's like a car crash in the lane when you watch that team play.
That was the problem with Baylor this year, is it was the combination of like bigs who can't stretch the floor and are also too short and unathletic to jump for a lob.
Right.
So it was like when you rush over, like when he gets into the paint, it is the easiest help assignment in the world if you're big, because you can almost sell out on VJ and you will more than have the time to recover by the time Norchad Omier bobbles the pass for 3 seconds. Like
exactly.
You're going to be okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a lot to that. And again, like I just think his passing, when it's like from a standstill or it is a quick pass, is like really impressive for a guy his age. Like I think he's really sharp when it comes to just like the quick 0.5. I've mapped the floor before I have the ball, whereas to your point, it's like the on the go, like, okay, now the defense is moving a lot and I'm having to like come up with the plan.
Sure.
That's when it gets a little dicier for him.
Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
People keep saying, it feels like everyone, this is the thing that's been frustrating me the most throughout the process.
Okay.
Is that everyone just goes, it's either one of two ways. Either his handle isn't good enough and he won't get better at it. Or two, his handle is fine and he will get better at it with no further additional explanation at all. Which is, I know it's hard to project because handle development, like you said, is not something that is super common. Now we have a few examples of guys getting to now look, you have examples of guys improving their handle over time and they get from like bad to passable, like Jaylen Brown's an example of that, where it was like it was kind of a disaster in college and now he can handle the ball and run some plays. And
similarly bad contacts, I just want to point out too to VJ. Just in terms of that Cal team and like
probably worse guys.
Even worse. Yeah. But that what I'm trying to get at here is my question more so is, what do you think that what do we mean when we say handle improvement? Because like I want to know what he needs to work on. And when Tom Crean went on the Ringer Draft Show and he was talking about it, he was like, I'm not worried about his handle at all. Like he was like, I've worked with guys in his mold before. I coached Anthony Edwards, I coached Victor Oladipo, I coached Dwayne Wade. I will look at VJ Edgecombe, and I've watched him since he was in high school, and I think he's going to be totally fine as a ball handler in the NBA. But he didn't really give any more explanation other than just like he's got a good crossover game. Basically.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's going to sound like I'm kind of like pouring it on him, and I don't like. I'm saying this is the guy who has VJ third on my board.
I was going to say you're high on VJ.
Yeah, it's an overall just like command over the ball issue, where and that manifests itself in a multitude of ways. So the one of them is that like if he is running pick and roll and he's met with an aggressive ball screen coverage, he is not going to split the screen. He's not going to, go to the other side of the floor or string it out. Like he just passes the ball immediately. Like when he's blitzed, like when he is blitzed, there is no crafty way around it. It's just, I need to get off the ball ASAP.
Sure.
And sometimes he'll rush that pass over the top of the defenders. It gets tipped. Etc. The other was like the driving without a plan, like we talked about. I think the real issue is just, especially when he is going to his offhand, the overall like the command over the ball is just not good. Like his dribble gets wide, it's easy to dig into. But also like when he goes fast, he just kind of loses control of it. Like there's a lot of turnovers of him catching and going, and then all of a sudden like the ball is just out of bounds. It's really strange. And it's like, that's the thing that scares me, is not so much like, oh man, if he had kept his handle alive there and like done a pullback dribble and then hit a crossover, he could have gotten his defender off their feet or whatever. It's just like, he feels out of control at top speed. And I think that's part of the reason he struggles with his pull-up shot as well, is if you look at his pull-up attempts, his body's kind of swaying all over the place. There's just like a lack of balance throughout his core on those shots. It just feels like he needs to find a way to marry pace into his downhill game. I think that helped him with the finishing. It helped him with mid-range stuff. But I think that's a big reason that he has issues with the handle, is that he just kind of goes too fast, loses control of the ball, or he's going and his body's just not totally in sync and it's getting away from him.
last thing on VJ, when we talk about because I think that my whole thing with VJ is something that my friend Dan has said throughout this whole process, which is that once he fine tunes the handle, everything kind of falls into place, like you just said. Like it's almost like if he does make those improvements, which everything we have heard is like he's willing to put in the work, it's
really great kid by all accounts. Yeah.
Everyone says he like works super hard on this shit. If he does improve all of that, it feels like everything kind of falls into place in terms of it will help with, how he deals with double teams. It will help with how he drives. It will help with how he finishes around the basket. The pull-up game.
Mm-hmm.
I know he hit those shots at the combine. We didn't really see him ever shoot all that much in college, and when he did, it rarely ever went in.
Yeah.
And two, the shots I watched the combine, the shots that he was taking at the combine, everything was just in slow motion. Like that is not something that I feel like will translate to the NBA in terms of pulling up from mid-range at a minimum. Maybe you can get away with it from 3 a little bit more if you get a screen or whatever. But it felt like it was a very mechanical, like, pull-up that he had. It feels like he's still kind of figuring that out.
Mm-hmm.
What level of pull-up shooter do you think he can get to? Because to me, we talk about the star level outcomes, and I think that until he is at least a passable pull-up shooter, he's probably stuck at star in his role level outcomes, as opposed to like the truly high level outcomes, unless he, is basically, I think Victor Oladipo is the only one that we've talked about that never really had a reliable pull-up game, but was just so good at getting to the basket, drawing contact, and hitting enough of his shots that he was, an absolute demon when he had that one season where he was healthy.
Yeah, I'm in a similar spot there. Like I think it's probably a star in his role level pull-up shot eventually. Like it just needs so much work. Like I just watched him a minute ago, like the body mechanics are really bad. Like you mentioned too, like he takes his time with it. I know in one of the shooting drills, like it's a timed one and he like didn't take all of them. So like that's, a little concerning. But I really think like one of the biggest things with pull-up shots in general is just like the comfortability with them. And when I wrote about him earlier this year, like I was astonished like how similar a lot of his numbers were to Donovan Mitchell. And I went into him and it's like Donovan Mitchell took like 3 times as many mid-range pull-ups and like twice as many pull-up threes at Louisville. And it's just like having the confidence to do that. Well, like Donovan Mitchell like still had a lot of the same tools and was also kind of viewed as like more of like a two-way prospect coming out than like the player.
Avery Bradley was the comp.
Yeah, exactly. So like even for that type of player, VJ just feels way behind the curve in terms of comfortability and ability to get the job done. So it feels like between that and the handle, I think you're likely looking at like a moderate outcome on both of those things. But if it does go really crazy and like he really explodes, it's going to be because one or both happen. But I wouldn't bank on it. I think the star in his role level is sort of what you're most likely looking at.
I just don't see Daryl Morey taking a guy with the 3rd pick. Like the more I think of, I know that I've been locked in since the night of the draft lottery. I've been hearing VJ's locked as the pick. I haven't thought about anything else. That's kind of like, no matter what, VJ is their guy. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, unless they think that one of those things is going to happen, they really have to believe in that for me to think that Daryl Morey will use the 3rd pick in the draft on this guy. Because if they think he's just like I think you talked about like switchblade guard. If they think he's a Josh Hart or a Nickeil Alexander-Walker type, they will not be taking him with the 3rd pick in the draft. And I know that is the thing that over and over again that I've heard and I know Kyle Neubeck finally was like, isn't it starting to get weird that all we ever hear is how much they love VJ and how much they want to take VJ? I'm still like 80%, 85% that it's VJ Edgecombe at 3 for the Sixers. But if they do take him, I think they view him as more upside than what some people think. I think even people that have him in the top 5 or 6 on their board maybe would have, those like starter level outcomes, but not like high impact level outcomes. So Chuck is here. What's going on, Chuck? How you doing? Question. Chuck, where do you have VJ on your board? I know that Maxwell, I think you said you had him 3. Sam, do you have him 2 or 3? 3. I have him 3. Where do you have him, Chuck? I know you're lower on him than the general consensus.
I think I'm flip-flopping between 7 and 8. That's where I've got him. And
let's just list off who you have. The general. You don't have to say everyone, but like who do you have definitively?
So apart, everyone knows I really like Khan. So I have Khan ahead of him. I have Flag and Harper ahead of him. The ones I definitely have ahead of him as well are Queen and Murray Boyles. And then where the cluster that he's in includes Trey and Malawach, Ace, Cedric Coward, and Adu Thero. Okay. So I like 6 to 11. That's the tier that he's in, and I think that VJ's really clearly good. He's clearly a good player. But thank you, Maxwell, for using the term switchblade guards. I know you were helping me with that, but like when you think about those guys, the ones that have really popped in the playoffs, like, you know, Drew Holiday, White, Nikhil, Caruso, even KCP a little bit, you know, when he was with the Nuggets and with the Lakers. They all just kind of tend to be a little bit kind of longer. Like they can contain a dribble and really like envelop an opposing guard, get over screens and just bother with length and strength. And VJ's an outstanding athlete, but he is not particularly like tall, long, or strong. Not like for his position. He isn't. He's sort of built more sort of like Kaysen Wallace, who is another one of these guys and who's good, but you see the difference between Kaysen and like Dort. And Kaysen was a better shooting prospect coming out than VJ is. So, and like he when I watch him attack off the bounce, because you can still have him high if you think he has like a Donovan Mitchell kind of outcome to him. But like when I see him, he does not like really manipulate anyone with his dribble. It's not that he's like a bull in a china shop because he's too good a passer for that. His like eyes are always up. But it is kind of like if his first driving angle gets cut off or he gets steered in a certain way, he'll take like a wide bad angle towards the rim and he like will not really counter or adjust. You can count on stuff like that improving in the NBA because he will have more space for sure. But you're asking him to, one, improve that, like his general driving and handling feel, and also kind of pop as a shooter, where like he has fine shooting indicators, but nothing that screams, I'm going to be like a high volume lethal 3-point shooter.
Going back to what we were talking about with Maxwell before is like, I feel like no one in his mold ever does though. So that's the thing that I think that you're banking on, right? Like, I know that you just talked about like the volume of shots, Maxwell, but I can't think of a single prospect, like even Anthony Edwards, and I know that he, once again, volume of shots, shot creation ability. I think the Anthony Edwards comp does VJ a disservice.
Yes.
I just think that they're entirely different players. Mm-hmm. The only thing they have in common is they both can jump high and they both have similar shot mechanics. I feel like the way that they're on their set shots feel kind of similar, but that's really it.
Yeah, it's also another case of like 40 pounds difference.
Exactly.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just another one of those.
That's the thing is that I talk
like
about
defensive end versus free safety. Yeah.
That's what I've talked about, is that a lot of the guys that VJ gets comp to are bigger guys like Depot or Mitchell, or Mitchell's at least built a little bit differently. Or someone like Anthony Edwards, whereas, you know, VJ weighed in at 190, whatever at the combine. Having said that, it feels like none of these guys really have high level shooting indicators coming out. And that's the thing that I think that VJ, that I was impressed with VJ, even though he didn't take those off the dribble shots, even though he wasn't the highest efficiency, highest volume, especially from the mid-range shooter. It feels like every time one of these guys comes out, I'm always like, it's always if the shooting with them. And it feels like he at least has more of a base to work with. Maybe it doesn't get to those higher level outcomes, but it feels like there's a lot to work with.
I also just really quick want to say, our experts can refute me on this if I'm wrong. It feels like VJ is also like way more of an athlete than some of these other guys we're talking about. Like, I don't remember Donovan Mitchell, like, I remember Donovan Mitchell being like kind of an athlete, but like we've talked about it before, he was like a 3-and-D like style prospect. Like, he was not really supposed to be what he is today. I guess what I see for VJ is I don't necessarily see VJ being a perimeter like creator. I do see him being like an elite attacking closeouts type athlete, a guy who has his advantage created for him and then is just devastating with that. Because I agree with what like the weakness is. It's probably not much to project like his handle's going to get like a lot better, but just in terms of like how his decision making has kind of gotten better as the year has gone along, I think that's been like the number one thing for me where I've been like, okay, we can work with this, because I think that that's going to be what's the most important is if you get a shot sprayed out to you, are you going to go? Are you going to pass? Are you going to shoot it? Like, you know, like quick decision making is really like the most, in my opinion, one of the most important things. And the fact that he does have a lot of this other stuff in the toolbox, I just think like, even if the handle is not there to hit like some of the highest of high end outcomes, I think something like Derek White is obviously Derek White is like an outstanding shooter. Derek White also shot like in the 2022 postseason 49 true shooting. Derek White has not always been like a lethal athlete. He's been a pretty valuable
Derek
player.
White has only been an elite shooter the last 2 years too. The thing. Like he has one of the weirdest career arcs that I've ever seen from a shooter. He's like, who becomes an elite shooter at age 27? Like that's crazy.
But he, as a high volume point guard at Colorado as a senior, shot 42% from three with a 5% block rate. So like he was his own freak when he was in college. It's just that
also when he was a freshman in college or in the NBA, like he was an average 3-point shooter when he got to the Celtics. The volume was high, but the efficiency was always like 36%. And then he became a 40% guy overnight. Like it's very
I think it has to do with reps. I think you just need to have a certain amount of reps where you are comfortable shooting off the catch or you're comfortable shooting a step back or a side step. It's all repping that out. And the thing with VJ, I confess that I might be like overthinking it or nitpicking, because I think, Sam, some of the guys in his athletic class maybe you think is like Oladipo or Jaden Ivey, those type of guys.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys tended to stay in college multiple years too to figure out their game a little bit before they came to the pros. None of them had sort of the hype train going in that VJ's had, but his wiring as a player is very team oriented, which is good. And I think it provides the floor. I don't know that his style of play lends itself to star outcomes that much, because he's going to want to be like, whatever the team needs me to do, like you said, attack a closeout, get off the ball. Like he's really good at weaponizing his gravity into finding guys at the rim, and his touch on those passes is really, really good. And so that's going to be extremely useful. But if you can't run a pick and roll and be a threat from 3 levels at his size, then you're not going to be a star. And it's very unlikely that you return top 3 or 4 value. Well, and I just don't know that he will find himself in a situation where he reps all of that out. Now, by the time he's 27, maybe it's possible. I wouldn't necessarily count on it from him, given where I think his skill level is now.
I think we actually agree on that. And this has kind of been Trill and I's difference in philosophy, where I'm fine with having a high floor guy that like might not ever be an all-star. Because my thing is I think it's like almost impossible to predict who's going to be an all-star. So why not take the high floor guy is kind of my philosophy. So that VJ is like custom built in a lab to attract me. So, but I think I see him like very similar to how you see him, Chuck, because I also don't really think there's like a ton of, I guess I'm not super hopeful he's going to like all of a sudden just be this like Damian Lillard dribble package guy, you know what I'm saying? Or like,
yeah, I don't think that anyone expects him to be that.
Yeah.
Once again, the guys that I think if Daryl Morey is drafting him with the 3rd pick of the draft, I think that he views it as we're taking a long-term bet on a guy who can be maybe a long-term Andre Iguodala, Drew Holiday, whatever it is. Maybe it's never a guy that makes 5 all-star games, but like, man, he's the 3rd or 4th best player on a contender, and he makes everything go. He makes everything work. He fights his ass off on defense. He's making the right plays. And now, obviously, all of these guys have had different levels of their career where they've played different roles. Maybe it's not quite Bucks Drew Holiday, and maybe it's more Celtics or late Sixers Drew Holiday or whatever, early Pelicans Drew Holiday. But long story short on this, I really have a very hard time seeing, because I think that Daryl Morey looks at it more so the opposite of what you look at it, Sam. Maybe it's different because his job is on the line. And the reason why I have VJ3 on here, and I think I might be a little bit higher on the higher end outcomes than his skeptics. Like, I do think there's a pathway for him to very obviously become a star in the NBA at a minimum, star in his role type guy. The reason why I am is because I just look at everyone below him on my board and I go, here's a massive flaw with this player. Sure. Here's a massive flaw with this player. Here's a massive flaw with this player. And maybe it's just because I'm more involved in the draft cycle this year because the Sixers actually had a pick. But like, I love Khan. I also think there's a chance that Khan just is not athletic enough, and it is like majorly effective on what he can be as a player in the NBA, which found me going Sam brain mode a little bit on this draft, where I ended up with Malawach fourth on my board, and I never do that. Like, I never have guys like Malawach that high, but I feel confident that VJ and Malawach are going to have 10 to 15 year NBA careers with outlier pass to star impact level guys. And I feel as though the star bets, quote unquote, in this draft, I could see it being very boomer bust in either direction.
Yeah, I think so. Like, you guys know that the RSCI top 5 before the season, Ace, Flag, Harper, VJ, Trey.
Yeah.
And so I think there is, especially among like more mainstream draft people like Gavoni or whoever, there's a tendency to just be like, well, those are the 5. Like, none of them were outright bad in college, so let's whether or not they know they have some anchoring bias or not, whether it's conscious or not, I think there's a lot of that at play, because you can certainly pick flaws. You can even pick flaws with Harper, frankly, but
and we have.
Yeah, I think it's legitimate. But like with VJ, if you compare him, so I mentioned Adu Thero, which I think I'm probably higher on than most on Adu. That guy, I don't know if you've watched him much from Arkansas, but he is the whole thing about how Calipari like suppresses his talent when he was at Kentucky over and over and again, different guards, Booker, Murray, whoever, Towns not shooting threes, all this stuff. Thero, to me, followed Calipari to Arkansas, and he's like the suppression guy. He is, I think, if he is less athletic than VJ, it is not by much, and he is like solidly bigger and stronger, and I think like presently a better defender than VJ is. He is like an animal. And so if you were to compare him to these top 5, like Adu has his flaws. He's not like, I think I have him like 11th. He's not like a perfect player or anything like that. But if you want to try to project, well, what sort of role player, if we're not finding a star here and we're like sort of betting on floors with some upside tailed to it, wouldn't you like, isn't there a lot of appeal in a role player high floor type that is going to be like as big or bigger than the guys he's guarding most of the time, and as athletic or more athletic? And that's where I come down to with VJ is like, I just don't know that he's going to be that much of a problem on that end. In a weird way, he reminds me kind of Vassell, who's like a really good player. VJ is more athletic than Vassell. Like, they're different styles of players. But Vassell has turned into more of an offensively tilted guy than a defensively tilted guy, despite what his reputation was coming into the draft, because he's like 6'5" and he's skinny. And that's so he can't just like really good NBA players just sort of overwhelm him. And maybe overwhelm's the wrong word with VJ, because he does have all this twitch, but it's hard, man. If he's on the Sixers and they're playing Maxey and just Grimes, let's say McCain's coming off the bench and they're starting Maxey and VJ.
Oh, I think VJ would come off the bench. I think the idea is that you bring VJ and McCain off the bench next year.
Okay, fair enough. It's just like, so he comes off the bench and how long do you want him coming off the bench for as like the 3rd overall pick in the draft? Is it take him 3 years to become a starter?
I think that they probably do it for him as a rookie to kind of ease him into his role. I don't think that, just generally speaking, Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse are not guys that tend to play rookies. And I know they've never had the 3rd pick of the draft. They've also drafted, like, he's drafted an all-star level player and Doc Rivers was the coach at the time, to be fair. And Maxey was still very raw and figuring it out and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But in my mind, I don't really think they view it as like any of these guys are going to start immediately, assuming the Sixers, they need to save their jobs. So they probably view it as like, here's the amount of rookies that come in and are starter level impact guys. We think we can ease this guy into a role and he can show enough and give us enough as rookies, as a rookie, that long-term we can, it's going to be more of a long-term bet on him. I highly doubt he will be starting. I mean, unless they start Grimes at the 3, but I think they're starting Grimes and Maxey as the backcourt. I think they'll probably try to acquire another forward this offseason to be the 5th starter along with Paul George, and assuming Joel Embiid is healthy. And then the first 2 guys off the bench will be VJ McCain. Now, will they play in 3-guard lineups? Yeah, absolutely. I think that there will be a time where you put Grimes at the 3 and VJ's maybe at the 2, and then one of Maxey or McCain plays with them. I think that VJ is probably going to be like a 20 to 25 minute a game guy off the bench as a rookie. And I think that's just generally speaking, unless they got Harper, I don't think Harper or Flag, I don't think that anyone would be starting for this team immediately.
At 3, yeah. I mean, probably not. But I think that speaks to, I think, how good and polished of a shooter Grimes is and how much you want that spacing out there.
Sure.
And that just like, I don't know, I guess it just sets a high bar, man. Like and that maybe that speaks to what the top 10 is. Because like you, Trill, I keep just finding nits to pick with people in the top 10. And I think that Malawach is sort of like a smart cynicism pick where you're like, well, he's going to play. And if that shot comes around, then that's so valuable and you can use that in the playoffs. My thing with him, apart from the fact that I think like his defense is kind of further away than what you would hope it is that like 5s are just so like offensively dynamic now. And
that's always been my setback with him, is that I'm like, what can you do with the ball? Because it feels like that is something that he is going to struggle with. And I feel like that is the big thing that's always held me back from Malawach. Having said that, I mean, he is literally like the peak version of his archetype on offense pretty much already, I feel like, in terms of outside of being able to like, extend advantages with, getting into the short roll and finding guys and blah, blah, blah. I don't even know if he'll ever be able to do that, but I just mean like the run and jump traditional big that we think about. Like,
yeah, sure.
I feel pretty comfortable saying that he's going to be very good at that at a minimum. And I feel like if there's one guy in this class that he better be good as a rookie, I feel like it's Malawach, even if the conditioning and the high minute load stuff comes later. My whole thing is like, if you're bad as a rookie as a big, that's a huge red flag, because the large majority of bigs in the last 5 or 6 years have come in and been able to play at least an effective 20 minutes and not be a disaster. And if they are, it's usually a big red flag, and most of those guys do not work out.
Do you like him more as a prospect than you did Lively?
I missed the boat on Lively is the problem, is that I underestimated all of the passing stuff with him, all of the quick decision making, and also in addition to Lively, being a better switch defender than Malawach too is another factor with him. But also Lively was drafted to literally the perfect situation with Luka Doncic. And I'm not sure that Lively is going to be someone that's going to be like, if they had kept Luka, then yeah, I would be like, Lively's probably going to make all-star teams and all defense teams, and he'll have, but like, I really do think that archetype of player is specifically dependent on a context to be a high-level impact player, and them trading away Luka hurt Lively more than almost anyone on the whole team, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely
did. Sorry, I had to help get.
No, we could. We're just.
So, are we doing common right now?
Yeah, I was gonna say we can do. We're doing common Malawach right now.
Okay.
So where do you have him on your board?
So I believe I should have this memorized by now. I'm looking at my 2026 board. I believe I had him around 6 or 7. Let me pull that up.
Yeah,
So my thing with Common is like, I think the floor is like really high. Like I think he's just obviously good based on the finishing and being enormous. And he was also a guy who got better at shot blocking throughout the year, which again, like I always like when guys like stats peak later against the real teams as opposed to the fake teams early in the year. So I think there's just like an obvious, I have him at 6. I think he will like clearly be good. And I think, again, it's just a combination of like size, motor, offensive production. Where he scares me is the ball skill stuff like you talked about, but also just like his hands in general. Like he bobbles the ball a lot. And I don't know how much of that is just bad hands versus like positioning. Because if you watch the game against Houston where everyone was killing him for like not getting any defensive rebounds, it wasn't so much that like, oh, he had a rebound and dropped it. So much as it was like, why did he let 6'8" Jawan Roberts box him out or like give up that level of positioning to where it was harder to reel the ball in? And I struggle with that a lot because I think if you just told me he will be able to like slightly shore up his ability to get positioning and grab boards, I'd probably have him at 5.
That's actually where I have him. I looked at my board. I have him 5 right
now.
I
think he's obviously good, but I think just being that big and a bruiser and like having a degree of touch too, like weird that he's that good of a free throw shooter and is like comfortable taking a 3. That's not normal at all.
No.
Like if he's just that big and can knock down the occasional 3, like you can make that work even if he's not any sort of playmaking hub whatsoever.
Exactly.
I think like the value is obvious. I'm just sort of leery of the higher upside stuff because the weird stuff with the hands and also just comfortability dribbling. I've yet to see him make like a single impressive passing read. And even in like the Basketball Africa League tape where they kind of let him do more as a playmaker, it was not good. He was turning it over a lot. I just really don't see the star stuff with Common, but I think he's just clearly good.
I know that this is probably a stretch because Miles Turner, when he was coming out, already had displayed better free throw shooter, shot 3s in college and like made 3s in college, and has, you know, obviously for a big is a very good shooter, mid-range guy. Like
and was a better shot blocker. Don't forget that as well.
You know, but the thing is when I watch Miles Turner in these playoffs, I don't really think of him as like a high level like playmaker. I don't think of him as someone who's making a ton of quick decisions. I think they've kind of simplified his role for him. And if you're thinking about a long-term, like, obviously he's not going to be getting the ball, getting downhill and driving quite as much as someone like Miles Turner. But if it's some sort of hybrid between like, he can just have a normal pick and pop game combined with the rim pressure finishing, which is just going to be fantastic, even if, you know, the hands aren't always the most reliable thing. I understand that he was in a perfect context at Duke. We just talked about Lively being drafted to a perfect context. He got to play with Flag and Khan, who were both incredible at finding him, throwing lobs, simplifying his role, making everything easier for him. Having said that, it just does feel like the high floor combined with, if there is any chance he can either have any semblance of a pick and pop game as a shooter, or even if it's just like showing a little bit of touch from the mid range, I think that there's a chance that he is like not quite as good on defense as Rudy Gobert, but like offensively Rudy Gobert with a little bit of ability to extend outside. I still think that's just an incredibly valuable player. And once again, probably similar to VJ, maybe more of a star in his role type guy. But I think that these are the kind of guys that I just think we overthink this archetype every single year in the draft. I feel like every year I go, man, I should have had that guy 5 spots higher on my board. And I know that he has his own unique flaws and he's his own unique player, but also if you talk about the level of efficiency that he created at the rim this past year as a roller, combined with the fact that he has shown at least a little bit, and he's new to basketball, it feels like to me that I feel like I don't want to be on the opposite side of selling this guy short with the crazy tools and just general ability because it's easy to find centers or whatever the argument is.
Which, I think is like total BS. Like it's easy to find centers thing is like so far from the truth.
Yeah, not anymore. I feel I now look, center, the argument, the other argument probably against that is like most of the guys like Walker Kessler, Rudy Gobert, all those guys get drafted in the 20s, right? And but like they always return. Now obviously Rudy's an extreme example. I want to be clear here that he is quite literally the outlier. But all of these guys, whether it's even if they're not 1-for-1 comps, a year later, I'm always like, why did I have that guy 15 on my board when it was like obvious that he was going to be a pretty good NBA player right away, and then in time returns like top 5 or 7 value, and I feel stupid for not having.
Well, we're 1 year removed from the great center draft of 0 misses. Like, every we talked about this. Like every first round center prospect worked out last year. Like you had
Ware, Klingon, Missy, all to a certain degree.
Yeah,
Demon,
and girlfriend guy,
Filipowski in the second.
Yeah. So like you project, obviously like projected in the first round, but like I do think that like this is one of those things where the league's kind of like overcorrected, because there was a lot of years where it was like, yeah, you can, and this still happens. You know, you get your Luke Cornettes, you get your guys that you kind of like find the guy who has the skill set, but like that's kind of like the outlier. Like a lot of the starting centers are guys who were drafted to be starting centers in the league. You think of like Jakob Poeltl as being like kind of the average starting center. It's a guy who went top 9. Now, am I going to argue that was a good pick? Not necessarily, but like he was drafted. Like Mark Williams is probably not, but like he was drafted. Like a lot of these guys, it's you know, I guess that what I'm saying is the days of being able to get Zubac in the second round, was he at the end of the first?
No, he was second.
He was second. Yeah. Like that's not happening anymore. So like, I do think that you just need to like,
well, Filipowski was a second round pick, but that was for different reasons.
I was gonna say, there were some reasons there. Yeah. I also have Malawatch 5, and I've kind of stratified him outside of the Harper, Trey Johnson, VJ tier.
Sure.
Like I think for me, like him, Khan, and Ace are kind of in the I like you but question marks tier.
Sure.
Like so that's like its own thing where it's like I'm pretty sure Malawatch is a starter, and I think like at 5, 6, like in this draft.
About that, Sam, do you think that he pick a team who you think might take him in the draft? Phoenix? Do you think Phoenix might if he's at 10 or something?
I think Phoenix would definitely take him. I think the Hornets are always a wild card. I bet somebody in that Hornets front office is staring at him at 4.
I would take him if I were the Hornets. I'm like,
you would?
Yeah, I would. Hear me out for a second.
Okay, go ahead.
Now look, if they're not married to LaMelo, then yeah, probably you might just want to take a player that is a different kind of. They already traded Mark Williams once, and what is Malawatch if not if you're taking him with the 4th pick in the draft, you like him, right? Then you think he's going to be a bigger, longer version of Mark Williams, essentially. And he's going to have a high impact. And Mark Williams, prior to the injuries, showed a decent amount when he was younger. And then obviously kind of his stuff has gone off the rails. His defense is completely fallen apart, but that's another conversation. But my whole point on this is like every guy that gets connected to them outside of VJ, who probably makes the most sense for their current situation, I'm like, how do you make a Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball, Con Knipple trio work defensively?
They need to make a move so bad.
Yeah, like if they're
they definitely
LaMelo, completely different conversation. Then I'm willing to hear just take best player available. If you think Khan is the high ceiling unlock guy that you just get in and he can play off of these guys to start, and then long term he's your guy, I'm all in. I like it. I have Khan I have him ahead of Malawatch on my board. Having said that, in this current context, I actually think Malawatch makes a ton of sense for them. Can they just draft normal basketball players? Like they took Tidjon Saloon with the 6th pick in the draft last year. And, look, I know that we debated Scoot versus Miller up and down. It looks like the Miller heads are going to end up winning on that. And Miller, not a normal basketball player, but a very productive, good one in college, and someone that we probably could have a lot of people saw coming in the NBA. Like, I just feel like taking more of a sure thing for them is never bad when you consider that franchise just feels like it's always a tire fire.
Man, I guess, yeah. I'm like, are you sure he's going to be better than Mark Williams? I know that Mark has injury concerns, but Mark was a great finisher at the rim too. That was the best thing he did when he was at Duke.
Shots in college too. Like it becomes one of those things where it's like, is this Mark Williams' fault, or is this something internally that did not happen that led to Mark?
Well, the concerns with Williams in 2025 are different than the concerns with him as a prospect.
Yeah,
like as a prospect, I really liked him. I think I had him top 10 on my board that year. Like I was like, he's good. Like I don't have a problem with whoever takes him in the lottery. Like, and he ended up. I mean, all of the things with him feel like they're just related to injuries. Like his defense is not good at all anymore because he's been injured.
And I would say, like, sure. I would say though that at least my read on Kaman's defense is that he, like, all the intangibles are good, like good communicator, works really hard, plays hard, but he does not defensively, in my opinion, he does not like control the game.
Sure.
In my, like, he's still learning and he's still like executing his assignments. You can kind of see his wheels turning about him positioning himself the right way, because with his physical gifts, what was his block rate? Like 6.5, something like that.
It got better throughout the year, but it was around like 6.5. It was like the same block rate that Quentin Post had.
Right.
It really underscores.
Demon Post? Wait, we can get Demon Post? Come in. Let's go.
Right. Like Klingon, who's like a historic block rate guy, keep in mind, but he had like an 18% block rate. Mark Williams, who's like a bad defender now, was what, around like 12 or 13?
Probably around 12. Like that's where you sort of should be if you are.
I do think the Mark Williams stuff is just related to injuries.
I think it's injury, but I also think it might be like player development. Like
that also might, yeah, maybe. Okay, so that's the argument against them taking Malawatch, is that they can't develop anyone, and honestly, and I'll say this from a Sixers perspective, I'm so happy that they stopped trying to draft the Jaden Springer types, because it feels like they can never develop anyone, and they need to draft guys who are self-starters. Like Maxey was a self-starter, McCain was a self-starter, VJ's a self-starter, like guys who are going to live it. Trey is also seemingly a self-starter. Like all you ever hear is about how that guy's in the gym and he locks himself in there and he works his ass off. Like those are the kind of guys that if you are the Hornets, you want to draft someone more in that mold of, let's get a guy who's going to develop himself, because we haven't really been able to develop anyone to the point where we might have done the opposite of development. We might have regressed with LaMelo Ball to the point where he is just basically a someone who just puts up the worst shots in the NBA. And I think they literally said he put up the most shots since Kobe in 2006 this past year, and was not incredibly efficient, and it has seemingly not really developed his game at all. So long story short on this, maybe the Hornets shouldn't take the guy that people view as more of like, you got to develop him and work out his game. Maybe you just take Khan, who's more like, I wouldn't say by any means a finished product. I still think Khan has a lot more upside to his game than people give him credit for. And I think that's the thing that people sell short with him in general, but he's going to have a role from day one in the NBA. And then maybe you can turn him into something more down the line.
Mm-hmm. So do any of y'all, and hopefully I'm not as loud, I just tried turning down.
No, you're good. It sounds great now.
That's actually a lot better. Yeah.
All right. So I guess, have you guys talked about Trey?
So we have not talked about Trey yet. I have Trey 6 on my board. So I right now, I had him higher at one point. Another guy that I've talked a lot about on the podcast with both Sam and Chuck off air. Me and Chuck have talked about him a lot. So right now my top 6 is Flag, Harper, VJ, Khan, Malawatch, Trey. So my question for you with Trey is, there's a very obvious role for him in the NBA.
Yeah.
What do you think for him to reach like the higher end outcomes, the star level outcomes? What do you think it looks like? Do you think he just has to become like a pick and roll demon essentially because of the pull up shooting? Or do you think he's someone that needs to flex on and off the ball? What does it look like for you?
I think he needs to be in the top 5 in 3-pointers attempted every year. That's what I think he needs to do. Because he's a very good passer. He definitely is a good passer, but he shot over 200, maybe even over 300, probably 200. Over 200 like mid-range shots this year, because when he attacks downhill, even though he's a legitimately good, like legit good, not good for a shooter, just like good passer.
Yeah.
A very good passer. He does not either have the feel or the tendency or preference for even trying layups. Like he will if he has an open lane, but if you like show him a body, he's rising up or he's kicking out or something. And I just think that he does not threaten the rim enough to be like a high volume pick and roll guy. It's still the most valuable area of the court, and I don't think he leverages it enough. But he's in Texas where they couldn't turn him into like off the ball, just like monster. And so I think in the NBA, that's the gravity you leverage first, because his movement shooting is so good and his form is so good and so quiet. And just
quick question. Who do you think is I've been saying I think he's the best shooting prospect since Tyler Hero. Who do you think is also in that do you think there's been anyone since Hero that fit, just in terms of like diversity of shot, everything is good with him as a shooter?
Everything is good with him for sure. I think
he can make any kind of shot.
I think that 2020 had a lot of good shooting guards, because you had like Bane, Neesmith, Joe, Halliburton, Maxey.
Hallie's a good one, yeah.
I mean, like, so it's, and I think Trey, he's like he has like phone booth shooting, where it's like there and it's up, like very tight space. He's just getting it up and getting it off. I don't know that, but like all the best shooters are guys who are constantly threatening the defense in multiple ways, and they are terrified to do anything against that. With Trey, if you like stick really tight to him around a screen and you turn him into a playmaker, he can still hurt you, which is why I think he belongs in the top 7. But all the way to the rim, finishing through contact, that's where it starts to get a little bit iffy. And so that's why I just think you have to, his goal is like 11 to 12 threes a game, and you build everything up off of that. And then he's like a serious weapon. It's like I still think his ultimate fate is like I'm not comparing him to Bane because they're different, but like that sort of primo third starter kind of guy. Sure. And it's just a matter of whether or not he can fit into the right defensive ecosystem. Because
that's the thing that I wonder with him. That's the thing that I wonder with him too. Bane's interesting. I know this is going to sound like slander, but it's genuinely not. I could see his offensive role when he comes into the NBA being like he's not quite as big as this guy, but like in terms of like Duncan Robinson put on a lot of weight, but that 2-man game that Duncan Robinson and Bam used to have in Miami, where because of the fact that he knows, one of the things that's really impressive with him and something that you talked about is the fact that like he's willing to like set ghost screens, and he's someone who is going to run dribble handoff actions. He's not going to be someone I think that is like, give me the ball all the time to start. I will play the role you want me to play, but long term I'm going to want more than that, obviously, because I feel like I'm a superstar potentially. People have compared him to like a young Ray Allen. Obviously that's its own issue in itself, but the long story short on this is that his shooting and the gravity of his shooting, combined with the fact, like you said, he's a good passer. Like, I think of those plays that like JJ Redick and Joel Embiid used to run. And I think of those plays that Duncan Robinson and Bam used to run, where they're doing the dribble handoff stuff and he reads the defense and finds the right read off of that. He's going to be able to do that from day one in the NBA probably. And then you hope that the other stuff comes along as he ages, as he grows into, maybe more of an on-ball role in time. So the thing is I'm like, my thing with Trey is like, I have him as my first guy in what I call, I don't want to call it boomer bust, but I can't really think of another term in terms of like, if it hits, look out. And also the floor of this is probably like a solid to good bench fringe rotation player, like bench player / fringe starter, I should say. And the thing with Trey that I do worry about is like, you talked about the 2-point percentage. I know the situation at Texas wasn't great. I know he had to take a lot, but like the fact that he never got to the rim, it felt like I watched that Arkansas game and it felt like the only time that he ever got to the basket was end of that game. And at least the one thing I will say that was positive is that he was drawing 2 on the ball and he knew that they would be able to get the offensive rebound if he missed the shot. So he was trying to basically make it so that no matter what happened, they were getting an efficient offensive possession out of it. That was really the only time I felt like I watched him regularly get to the rim, was the end of that Arkansas game. And it was not pretty. It was like a lot of misses, a lot of off balance weirdness, a lot of struggling to finish through contact. And I just feel like that is going to be a real struggle for him, at least early in the NBA. Kind of similar to a guy like Bub Carrington, who we talked about last year and we all really liked.
Are we done
say-
crying about this loser stuff? This guy can hit the bottom of the fucking net. That's all I care about. Number 2 on my board, baby. Let's go, Trey. You and me against the world.
He is a special shooter, dude. I cannot deny that.
I just like, I just have such a hard time with the star outcomes because of the things that you outlined. The big thing to me too is like in high school, it was the same. Like there's guys where sometimes like you can go back to the old tape and whatever. In high school, it was like, I've got 1 foot inside the paint. Time to take the most wild layup you've ever seen.
Right, exactly.
Throw it up so I don't have to get too close to the basket.
So, Sam, can I ask you real quick? If you're Portland, would you trade Shaedon Sharpe for the rights to Trey Johnson?
Oh, no. No.
Sam doesn't take risks, John.
No. I wouldn't do that. I think, like, look, Trey, here's the thing. Here's what sold me on Trey, because I was actually pretty low on Trey. I think in our first iteration of our
We've
boards,
reversed completely.
I was 13. I had him 13 on my board.
I had him like 3 or 4, and the more I watched him, the more I was like, once again, just with everyone in this class, it scares me a little bit that a lot of the times, and Khan to an extent too, I talked about, I think the athletic limitation thing with Khan could end up sinking him a little bit. But the thing is that I feel like Khan just generally has better feel and will fit more into a role, and is also bigger. So I know that Trey has better tools or whatever, but like Trey's defense has got a really, really long way to go before he's even like a remotely even neutral defender. But the thing that I was going to get at is that me and Sam completely reversed course here. We're like, I'm usually like, fuck it, let's take the swing that this guy is legitimately the best shooting prospect in the last 10 years, and we can figure out the other stuff later. Versus, I do worry a little bit just because like some of the stuff is a little bit alarming with him, even though I buy the shooting and I buy the passing, and I think the ball handling is good enough for him to become like a really dynamic offensive player.
Here's what I would say. That the reason I would not take Shaedon, I like Shaedon Sharpe. B,
I like him
I
too.
don't like.
I love Shaedon.
Yeah.
I'm like probably going to be the last soldier in the Japanese island with Shaedon Sharpe.
B, I don't like that content. I do kind of want Trey to go to like one of these stripped down teams that has a lot of possessions to give up. I think like the Jazz, like let him get his reps in, let him like figure stuff out like on the Jazz. I think even though he and Bub have like some similarities, I do think like the Washington fit, like I think they could make that work. I do think like on the Hornets, even though there's only one ball, I think that they're kind of, no pun intended, getting to the end of the LaMelo experiment. I think that you do kind of have to be like looking forward to that.
Hooper anarchy again, baby.
Here's what sold me on Trey, and I don't know, maybe you draft guys have more. I've heard he's a psychopath.
He's definitely a psychopath. No question. Yeah.
I'm all in on that.
But Maxwell maybe is feeling differently.
So here's my pushback is like, so I watched the high school tape and I'm like, okay, this guy like takes a lot of bad shots. He can pass, but he misses some easy reads. He never gets to the rim, whatever. And like, I talked to someone who was like in like around him in high school, and they're like, yeah, you don't really understand like that role that he played on that team. That's not really the role that he wants to play. Unfortunately, he was just kind of like forced into playing this role. And then at Texas, it's the same shit all over again. Everyone's like, yeah, well, you don't really understand. That's not actually the role that he wants to play. It's kind of the role that he's forced to. And I'm like,
well, finally, he won't be the best player on his own team.
Why? Like, it just drives me nuts. Like, I want to buy into it so bad. And like people say he's like, he does work really hard and whatever. And it's like, I get it, but it's like you just keep ending up in these same contexts, and you keep taking fadeaway turnaround mid-range twos when you're double teamed, and I can't get over it. Like I think he is such a good shooter that like it almost doesn't matter. And I think as boring as the defense is, it's not horrible, and like he's gonna be around for a long time. There's something about him that I just can't quite convince myself into the high-end outcome stuff. Yeah. And he's not James Bouknight. Like I need to be crystal clear that like
is he like Gary Trent Jr. or like
Gary Trent Jr. with some sauce has been my comp for a lot of the year. I think he could be somewhere between Gary Trent with sauce and like Buddy Hield, who was like not a passer at all coming out. Like I think that's on the table. Like I think he could hit a really high-end offensive outcome. I just think between the defense, like the lack of rim pressure, and the fact that like you're just gonna have to live with the fact that like sometimes he likes to take really tough shots, and it's only gonna get harder to make those when guys are bigger, longer, playing you tighter and not respecting you as much. Like it's just going to get more difficult.
He scratches the Hooper itch for me so much, so I totally
Mm-hmm.
understand all both sides of the argument.
And like I've got him like 7. Like again, like I don't.
That's exactly where I've got him.
Yeah, I've got him 6.
It's just.
Yeah.
I just have the hardest time talking myself into the high end stuff.
I'm on the phone with Trey right now. I have him on speakerphone. They don't believe in you, King, the way I believe. Number 2, the San Antonio Spurs are going to rue the day they took Dylan Harper over you, King. Don't.
Sam also has Shaden Sharp on the other line, but he's not telling Trey.
Yeah, I'm also not telling him. I think Shaden Sharp has like
on the line.
I think Shaden Sharp has some unscratched defensive potential because I don't have much hope for Trey as a defender, and I don't really care, But
Sharp's been really bad defensively.
I get it.
I'm still holding out with him just because. I mean, look, my whole thing with Shaden is like. When he was young, he was a great catch and shoot guy, even if it wasn't on good volume. He still shot like over 40% on catch and shoots. I think for his career, he's like a 36, 37% catch and shoot guy. And then combine that with the fact that he's like 40% and up from mid range. He lives at the rim, and finishes like in the like 70% at the rim. Like to me, there is a great player in Shaden Sharp. I don't know if he reaches that, but I might have a little bit of aesthetic bias too, because he just looks like and sounds like a star to me as well. But I just think that
Shaden Sharp,
Shaden Sharp is such a star name.
Yeah,
he looks like a star, and like maybe I'm falling for once again the Hooper archetype of guy. Like, but the highs of the Shaden Sharp experience, and especially because he still isn't even 22 yet, is the big thing with me. Is like he's still. I know he was 3 drafts ago. I think he's about to turn 22 in like a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Like to me, there is still maybe even if it's just like a Zach LaVine or a higher end like a Jaylen Brown or whatever, that might still be 3 or 4 years away. But the long term stuff with him is very intriguing. I would probably still take my top 3 guys over him when I get to like 4, just because I think that the red flags on the defensive stuff. But when I get to
Shaden, you're still talking about.
I'd probably take him with I'd probably take him at like 4, just on the off chance that he has that development later. But I want to get to a few other guys here who we've talked about a lot on the podcast. By the way, the latest stuff. This is exactly why I wanted to ask you, Maxwell. The latest stuff is that. And I've been hearing it, and Gavoni confirmed it today, that Fears is like almost certainly going to go to 5 with Utah, which
we'll see. Yeah, maybe.
I mean, look, maybe Danny Ainge and Daryl Morey have the league in the palm of their hands and they're fucking around with everyone. But I was someone who started very high on Fears because of the handle and the paint touches and the rim pressure and the free throw rate and the touch indicators and all of the things that I usually find to be star type qualities with players, especially when you consider how, young he came to college and everything combined here. The more I watch him, the lower I get on him, only because it feels like he just really struggles with like size and athleticism at the college level, combined with the fact that he's not just working on the shot, but he's also a bad finisher. I'm still landing on him right now. I have him 10 on my board, I believe, because there's like a slight part of me that's like, what if the handle and the shot making and the rim pressure just translates and is real, and he is the outlier guy that is a small guard that can be, an on-ball type creator. I know you're a little bit lower on him, Maxwell.
I'm quite low on Fears.
I was going to say, I remember at one point listening to your podcast this year where you were like, I don't even know if I'd take him in the first round. I don't think it's that anymore.
I like if there's a guy that makes me look like an idiot in this class, it will be Jeremiah Fears, who I have 24th on my.
Wow,
I have him 14, and I thought I was going to be the low man.
I get it. Like the handle is really
the handle's so good. Yeah.
It's just hard to get. It's hard to get to your spots as well as he does, and I think that gives you like an unbelievable runway if this stuff comes around. I just think. The more you think about it, the more things have to break right for him to be a player that is conducive to a winning, like a really high level winning team construct in that like leading man type of role. My gut is just that it's a lot more like Colin Sexton if it breaks right. Is like kind of where I sit with it.
Would you rather have him or Dillingham?
Dillingham.
I agree.
Wow.
So yeah, I liked
Okay.
Dillingham last year. Yeah,
to be fair, I also like Rob. I had Rob lower on my board because I was also worried about the size. Like,
sure.
Like I was just like, oh, I mean, and my favorite thing to do is to go look at like players who were below a certain weight and made it in the NBA. And that list gets smaller and smaller every single year as the league gets bigger, as the league gets more skilled. And he's someone that fits into that box of like, he's like 175 pounds. And the guys that really make it at that level are like, I believe Darius Garland has put on weight since, but like, it's pretty much, if you want to talk star level outcomes, it's just Trey Young and Darius Garland. If you want to talk a tier down, it's like Dennis Schroeder. There's not many guys that truly end up making it as on-ball guys in the NBA that are that size. And they have to be pretty exceptional. And I think that he does have an elite handle, and I buy the touch. But the shooting and the finishing is really where, and the fact that he's not like a great passer and decision maker is the other thing.
Yeah, so that's where it comes down to it for me, is like he got to the rim consistently. He was really bad there. The guards, I feel like, who had finishing turnarounds, like we talked about earlier, like certain guys, they're athletic, they just don't finish well yet. The coordination's got to come along, whatever. Like they were all just more athletic than he was. Like he's just not. He's a
baby, to be clear. Turns 19 in October. Sure. He's a baby, but yes,
he just does not have the same like vertical pop and explosiveness that a lot of those guards had. Like he's sort of like a middle of the pack dunks guy. The turnover stuff is really shaky. Very basic reader out of a ball screen. Then there's the 3-point shot. Then there's the fact that he's a really bad off-ball defender. Who was just consistently put through actions against UConn. They just like put him through a meat grinder.
That was a tough one for him.
And then, so it's like, okay, so we need to reach the star level outcome. We need probably both the shooting and the finishing to come along. He's got to get like considerably better at reading the floor, probably. Like the on-offs, like everyone's like, oh, Oklahoma wasn't good, but like they really weren't even that much better with him on the floor. There were a lot of games throughout the year where they benched him, like not due to foul trouble, but just because like he was not playing well. Like you can go through his basketball reference and find games where he played like 23 minutes in like the middle of the season just because they were better with him off the floor. Like my gut is if it happens, it probably happens like a little bit down the road and there's some bumps and bruises before it actualizes. And I just think it's really hard to construct a team around like on-ball guys that don't have a really high level of proficiency in one of the most efficient zones of the court.
That's fair. And also there's a little bit of my own built-in bias here because one of the guys that I thought who had a shaky shot, but also had really good touch indicators from floater range, free throw, all that stuff was Maxey. And he was also
who made free throws in high school.
That's the difference.
I went back college. Yeah.
I went back to look at Fear's high school numbers, and I think this is 5-year sample where he's only been like an above average shooter in one season. And it was a very small amount of attempts in terms of like what he's going to be. Maxey was always a good shooter in high school.
Exactly.
That's the difference. Is like, you could be like, well, small sample size, weirdness, whatever. It's like the bigger picture tells you with Fears is that like, he has never been a reliable shooter. And if he's not a reliable shooter and the finishing is also a problem, what are we getting? Like to me, he has to become a knockdown shooter for me to think that he even has like a legit NBA career. And yeah, I mean, you might be right that it might be like Sexton. Schroeder was another guy I thought of with him because Schroeder's one of the only guys that I can think of who is a really good free throw shooter, displays a decent amount of touch, but
has his own app.
Has his own app.
The Fears app could hit the.
That's a great name already. Yeah. Fears app. There's that, and then there's also the fact that like his 3-point shooting has just always been incredibly streaky in the NBA, Dennis Schroeder. And that's the one guy that I can point to where like the touch is good from everywhere else. I guess DeMar DeRozan too, if you want to extend it further, because he's always been like a mid-range demon and a free throw guy who's never been able to extend his range. But the hope with Fears is that he is not that outlier, and that in time you get him with the right shooting coach and he figures out the shot. And then, maybe there is a Darius Garland level outcome for him or something.
Yeah,
But
and I do think it's possible.
Yeah.
And I think like if you want to make the pro Fears case, like I'm not a big free throw percentage is a shot indicator guy, but it's very rare for someone to make free throws that well and not shoot.
At a
and he
volume
was really
too,
good on
like all amount. Yeah.
Yep. And he was really good on his pull-up twos this past year too.
Yeah. And 36% on small sample size of catch and shoots.
What I always come back to with guards though is that like the shooting threshold once you're smaller is just so much higher. I think a lot of times we're like, oh yeah, like 36% is fine. It's like not for a guard.
Nope.
36% off the catch for a guard is not
for
good
someone
enough.
who's going to be running pick and roll. Like you have to be like high 30s and like not just like set shot. Like you have to be like Damian Lillard basically. Like
you got to be Walter Clayton.
Yeah, there you go. You got to be Walter Clayton. That's
who I have higher on my board.
I do too.
All right, we'll talk about Walter Clayton in a little bit because I think that he might be an underrated ceiling guy in this draft. But let's talk a little bit about someone who I have. So I listed off my top 6 are Flag, Harper, VJ, Khan, Malawach, Trey. 7 on my board is Colin Murray Boyles, who me and Sam have had a little bit of a difference over. Sam has come around on him a little bit more recently, but I did a little test case experiment because I know that we will get some propaganda that like he might shoot long term. I'm drafting him thinking he's just not a shooter. That's my mindset going into it. I'm not drafting him thinking that he's ever, because like to me, there's really no indicators that he can shoot, and like what's the argument here? Because I feel like every time I watch him, like
that, even though he can't shoot yet, his true shooting 67.
Agreed.
Which is on volume. Like his touch around the rim is incredible.
Don't disagree.
Like I think you could make the argument that the 2 best players around the rim. I mean, we can put Flag to the side for everything. The other 2 best players at the rim in the class are Flag and Harper. So, or not, pardon me, Harper and Murray Boyles. Queen's
pretty good.
Queen's very good. I have Queen really high too. But Murray Boyles, like, I don't know, Maxwell, maybe you feel differently, but like I could count maybe 1 or 2 guys in the SEC who even had a chance guarding him one-on-one when he's going downhill.
It was pretty wild how easily he just like moved Janai Broom.
Janai didn't have a prayer. He had played Janai last year as an 18-year-old when Janai was only 31. Yeah. He killed him. So like
I lean a little bit more toward the Trill side of things, where I don't think he's going to shoot it. And I think if he does shoot it, it's going to be kind of like what we talked about earlier, where it's like way down the road, like once like the reps are there, and then like it's something he becomes comfortable with. But I wrote an article,
not quite to this level, but maybe like a current Aaron Gordon type. Like obviously Aaron Gordon's like way better, but maybe it's like early Nuggets Aaron Gordon. Yeah.
But like I wrote this column last year about the path to providing starter value as a non-shooter. And like the most common thing was just like, you got to be good at everything else.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And he is. And like he high assist rate, gets a ton of rebounds, phenomenal defensive production. Like I think that he is a guy that he could get away with it because like Chuck mentioned, like he's just very physically hard to deal with and contain. He's a very smart processor. And I think that it's worth the risk. I think you can find ways to weaponize him and make him valuable without the shot. And if the shot does come around, like, holy shit, like you hit the mark.
I said, or sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to say real quick, this is an inexact science, but I did a non-shooting, non-center lottery picks from the last decade that have reached high-level role player or star status. Zion, Julius Randle, Aaron Gordon, Evan Mobley, Amen Thompson, Scotty Barnes, Denny Avdia were the guys that I came up with. As prospects, didn't really shoot, but also eventually grew into either high-level role players or star-level players. I feel like he fits in that group is the argument here.
I would think so.
That's the one thing. Like someone just said JJJ. I think JJJ shot in college, if I remember
correctly. Oh, he's incredible.
High volume. Yeah, he can shoot. That was the appeal of him coming out. Like the guys I was going to say, the guys that I'm thinking of are guys that were just marketed as non-shooters, didn't take a ton of shots if they took any shots at all, and they didn't make them. And those are the kind of guys that, to me, he belongs in that group because of what you just said. He's good at everything, high feel, plus massive plus wingspan, super strong, good driver. Like, to me, I think you could make the case that, like, if everything goes right with him, he has like the second or third highest level outcome in this class.
Yeah, I think so. So, like, a thing we were talking earlier about Maxwell watching the tape of Trey Johnson, and it like he's never like doing the thing you want him to do.
Mm-hmm.
My thing with Murray Boyles, why I have him fourth, and the reason I'm not even higher on him than that is that I thought that he should have been the best transition player in the country, because I think he is the best rebounder in the draft, and he can handle and he can drive. So I wanted him like grabbing and going and just murdering people. And it like very rarely happened. And I had Matt Powers on to talk about him. And he's like, yeah, South Carolina was in the 4th percentile nationally for transition opportunities. And like we had a bit of a disagreement where he's like, I think that's the system. He already is doing so much for them defensively and offensively. And I'm like, I still just want him to just be like, fuck you guys, I'm going. Like, I can do this, and I'm doing it. And to me, where like the Draymond kind of thing falls apart with him is Draymond always played so fast at Michigan State and was like basically their point guard, but he was always like we're going. And Murray Boyles thinks that fast, but he doesn't actually play on offense that fast because it's so ISO heavy. But I think there is hope that if you transfer him to the right organization that's going to make him run and speed him up, that he will be able to handle it. And if you get him, like we were talking about VJ or whatever, if you create an advantage for Murray Boyles and he has a line to the rim, like it's bowling pins, he'll just annihilate people. And so like when you say, do you think he can shoot? He can't shoot now, but he will get so many chances to shoot because no one is going to want to like give him a driving lane. Or like a driving lane to make a decision to pass off of because he's that good a passer. I think he will have every chance to do it. That's all.
He reminds me a lot of a young Julius Randle more than like,
sure.
Like I think that he's more in that mold offensively. And then defensively, I think that if you're Julius Randle with better defense as your ceiling type, that's a really good NBA player. So that's like my ideal level outcome for him if we're swinging for the stars here.
How do you feel about like a Bizarro Siakam compared?
I've heard Mobley, I've heard Siakam. It's interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be the cranky guy here because I have him I think 13, 14, 15. I have him 15. My thing is like you just ran through that list, Trill. I think like Julius Randle is like kind of the one that pops. Like I don't really see a Mobley outcome for him. I think Aaron Gordon is probably like another kind of higher end outcome. And like think of how many guys we've had kind of come through the draft since Julius Randle and Aaron Gordon, who were like a little bit in this mold where it doesn't really work out. My thing is I do think that there is
also Gordon's athleticism is
absurd.
Another level.
Murray Boyles is not a dunk contest guy.
No,
for sure. I will say that Aaron Gordon is also he's pretty strong. He's not Colin Murray Boyles strong. That is the thing I do really like about Colin Murray Boyles is how fucking strong he is. You guys talked about him moving John High and some of that other stuff. That's awesome. My issue is that the second I heard the Draymond comp and like maybe that immediately soured me because that is like such a red flag to me if you're compared to like the fastest processor in the history of the NBA. He could be like Colin Murray Boyles could be an elite processor and still not be half the processor that Draymond Green is. Draymond is a fucking freak. Like
Draymond is a unicorn. You're basically had the same reaction to me when people compared Ace Bailey to Kevin Durant, where I'm just like completely recoiled, like do not like that comp at all. Having said that, I think that I don't think that is a proper comp for him for exactly the reasons that Chuck said, but also because keep in mind, we all love Draymond. We know Draymond's like one of the GOAT playoff defenders, amazing player, but also was drafted to literally the greatest context in the history of the NBA for maybe any player, arguably. Now, was he a big reason why that whole team worked? Absolutely. Totally agree. He also got to play with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Well, the reason I say this just real quick, I want the Suns to draft Colin Murray Boyles at 10. That's my favorite. Now that they just traded away Kevin Durant, They need a guy who can play at a forward position. They need a guy who can be sort of a big for them on both ends of the court. I really love that fit, and I think that I will think higher of that trade if they make that pick than I did yesterday when we talked about it.
So, well, and that's so I like that. I like that fit exactly for that reason, that they just don't have players. Like, because the other my other big downside with
non-guards.
Boyles. Well, my other big downside is like I think he's gonna take an underrated amount of time to develop. Like when you think about Julius Randle, because when these guys are so weird, like Julius Randle, I don't even think it's really Colin Murray-Boyle's fault. You're just so much different from
Took 3 teams for Julius.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's such a rare thing. You have to earn the trust of the team to kind of build around you, which is why I like the Suns, because it's not going to take much, because you have to beat out Ryan Dunn to be the future of the franchise. You know what I'm saying? Like
they just need, we talked about, they need to take a swing, and he's the kind of swing I want them to take.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like because I actually do kind of buy him as like an engine. I just don't know how efficient that engine is. And I think a lot of teams are going to have talent where you're going to look at Colin Murray-Boyles, like the ISO, the drive, like a lot of the stuff we talked about. And it's going to be like, do we really like,
how does he work with fives who don't space the floor? There's a lot of
context issues that I'm concerned about.
I agree. But to me, the talent, the production, and the tools make him a worthy bet of reconfiguring your team is my argument. Like, I think that if he hits, then you go, we'll figure out that other stuff. And by the way, the Suns are basically a blank slate right now outside of Devin Booker. And we've talked about this ad nauseum, where it's like, you need to make a huge, like, look, I feel like I'm gone way too hard on this prospect, because I actually do think he's going to be a good NBA player in Carter Bryant. But like, if they draft Carter Bryant, I'm going to be like, you have no idea what you're doing. I feel like, because Carter Bryant's going to be a really nice player, but at the same time, you have no one. Like, you have one player who is like good and reliable.
Is it not just going to be like Jace? Have you got like? It's not.
I think they get Jace at the end of the first. They have 2 picks.
When's their second pick?
Their second pick is 27, I believe. And
no! Wait, is it really?
Yeah, I think it's literally 1 pick from the Celtics.
Are you serious? God damn it!
It's either 27 or 29. You might be one.
No, it's 29. Fuck yeah! Let's go.
Okay, but here's the thing.
We're so back, baby.
Here's the thing with that. I think that they acquired those seconds thinking that they might have to jump the Celtics or a team ahead of them to get Jace. I'm telling you, I think that they're going to take Jace. I just think it's going to be at like 25 or 26.
That would be impressive restraint.
Yeah,
on them if they could do that. That would be very.
I don't think they're going to take him at 10.
I think it'd be more likely that they would trade back from 10 and get extra stuff and get him.
Cannot take another guard, dude.
It would be
like
I'm just telling you, like it's like Jace until proven otherwise. The burden's on them to not take
I would chuck that, like I to anyone with a brain, obviously no, but I mean, it's the Suns.
Back to Colin Murray-Boyles. I mean, this is the. This is from a. I was going to say, this is the nightmare scenario from. I love the basketball fit of Colin Murray-Boyles on the Thunder. This is the nightmare scenario of, oh my God, if he goes to the Thunder, he's going to be really good, and then they're just going to dominate basketball.
I wouldn't like say it's unfair that the Thunder have all these picks, because the league would only have themselves to blame if they let Colin Murray-Boyles go to wherever. Where are they picking? 15, 14?
15, yeah.
15, yep.
Yeah, if 14 teams pass on him, then, shame on you. That's what happens. Yep. I don't know.
I got really mad when I thought about Miles Bird going there before he didn't declare to
our guy. Yeah.
I was gonna say Bird. Trill has been very rude to me in the DMs about Miles Bird. I can't wait till next year when he's a
I think Matisse Thybulle's really cool, dude.
Well, have you guys talked about me and Maxwell's guy, Mr. Coward? Has that conversation?
I was literally had him up next. I was going to say we have not really talked about him. I have him in my next tier of prospects. So I talked about how I ran down the Colin Murray-Boyles. I have Colin Murray. This is my continuing my Trey boomer bust style tier here. I have Trey, Colin Murray-Boyles, Ace Bailey, Derek Queen. We've talked to death about Ace Bailey. I don't want to talk about him anymore. Derek Queen, who I know that you're high on. I got higher on him throughout the process, Chuck. I do buy some of what you were selling with him. Jeremiah Fears, Thomas Sorber, and then I have Cedric Coward. So I have Sorber and Coward start a new tier for me, which is like potential starters tier, where I feel like these guys are guys I just know are going to be in the NBA for a long time. It just feels they fit an archetype. They are impactful. They're guys that the league tends to look for. Maxwell, you discovered Coward 2 years ago, was it?
It was after his sophomore year when he scored like 7 points per game at Eastern Washington.
That's unbelievable.
Like, this guy's a dude.
How did you figure it out?
So Coward had absurd advanced numbers that year.
A calculator rat's dream.
Did he 70%?
I didn't do the dive that Maxwell did, but I like tweeted about him. I was like, this guy seems good.
Yeah. So after his sophomore, so he started at a D3. Mm-hmm. And then he played at Eastern Washington as like a role guy. And they had 2 other guys that year that like people had interest in. Angelo Allegri, who's like a good like overseas like G League kind of guy, and Steel Venters, who's like just been like decimated by injuries. It's really unfortunate. But Coward in like a limited role had a near 74% true shooting percentage, a 9 offensive rebound rate, 20 defensive rebound rate, 14.9 assist rate, steal rate over 2, block rate over 3. And like you'd watch the tape and like my
He's like Cooper Flag, you know?
Yeah, that's crazy.
I remember at the time, I like this is like the greatest insight into my life I could possibly give. I texted Corey Tillaba from No Ceilings and I was like, if you put a gun to my head and said I had to find the next Javonte Green, I found him. Like I would bet my life that it's Cedric.
That's
Coward.
A perverted.
You're saying that as if you wanted the gun to your head. Like,
yeah.
I find the Javonte Green.
But like, that's what he was then. Like back then, it was like, oh my god, like I could see this guy just like sneaking up on people, and like he's just such like a motherfucker that you can like put him into a game and he can just like break shit and make stuff happen. Is like this cutter, crasher, slasher, like defender who like can make really sharp connective passes. And when I do that series, I like reach out to like schools, like, oh, can I interview these guys or whatever. And I interviewed Coward, and he was like the most determined man I've ever spoken to.
Everyone says this about him.
Like when I talked to him, I was like ready to run through a brick wall afterward. Yeah. Like he had some.
Yeah, you put the gun down and just run through a brick wall.
Yeah, like he shot just under 40% from 3 that year, but he only took 2.6 threes per 100 possessions. And he was like, people think I can't shoot because I didn't take that many. I'm going to take more next year, and I'm going to make them. Like I'm going to make them next year. I'm going to take even more, and they're going to go in. Like I know how good my shot is, and it's going to be a weapon. Like he was just straight up like telling me exactly what he was going to do. And I always love when guys do that. And the next year, he over triples his volume from 3 and shoots 38.3% again. But so he sort of evolved into like this off-ball shooter. And then he had some real lumps in terms of taking on the on-ball role.
Yeah.
Where he has a really hard time processing going downhill, like when rotations come his way, when help comes his way, and like countering and eluding that. Like he turns the ball over a lot on his drives. But he still had like a near 70% true shooting percentage every year of his career. So what I'm buying with him is when he played that energy role and he was able to be a much more active defender, the results were outstanding. We know the physical tools are outrageous. He's 213 already with a 7.5 wingspan. He's a stellar rebounder both ends of the floor. Phenomenal cutter, like really knows how to read the game in that off-ball role. We know he's a deadly shooter. We know he can hit off movement. We know he can hit from NBA range. He knows how to cut. He can bully a mismatch. I think the role is going to be simplified. Like I have a harder time buying that like he's going to turn into like this Kawhi Leonard kind of guy. But if you look at guys like, if we're talking like guys in the finals, guys like Aaron Nesmith, guys like Ben Shepherd, like before the year, my comp, and like I thought he looked really great in the games he
prospect
played.
Mikal Bridges is what.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think that's another one where it's like that's kind of the idea. But like even a guy like Ochai Agbaji who just like plays and is fine. And you look at Coward, and it's like there's so much more defensive disruption. There's such a better brain for playmaking, and the shot's the same, and like the defense is going to be way better, and he's way longer. Like Coward, to me, it's just like the floor outcome here is so great that you can just sort of bet on it. And if the handle and like that stuff comes along, you're really cooking. But I don't know what more you can ask for out of like an off-ball player and energy guy than like super high character, very intelligent, high work ethic, outstanding physical traits, knockdown shooter, great connective passer. Like I
I love you, Maxwell.
I love it. Yeah.
I love you. I think so. Like, Coward is sort of like my Malowatch in this class, where because you find all of these nits with all these other players,
Sure.
The one that I would default to, just because like I know he's going to be good, I know what he does is going to be valuable, and it's going to stand up to like the next several draft classes because of his dimensions or whatever. It's Coward. I like the true shooting stuff. Like, I know like we're all calculator rats in here. Everyone knows my favorite prospect I've ever like scouted is Trey Murphy. And my thing with Trey Murphy is that no team, arguably it still hasn't happened, but no team has found the usage level where the efficiency really starts to drop off. It's just still so high, and you have to expand his role and expand his role and expand his role. And he has to, put together the dribble package and whatever. But like, that is the prospect to bet on. And that's where Coward is right now. You have not yet found the role for him where it falls off. And like, the big counter is that like the numbers have not been great against high competition. He hasn't played a lot of high. He's played like 8 or 9 games.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
And a lot of them were his first ever Division I games being a lead ball handler.
Yeah.
Like it was
Which
like,
is not a role he projects to be in the NBA too.
Yeah,
like that's my whole argument against that argument, which is that like if I need Cedric Coward to run my offense, I've got bigger problems.
Right.
And I would say the other thing I would push back on too is I've heard a lot of people be like, well, they only played one real team this year and he sucked. And they're talking about the game against Iowa, where the shot didn't go in. But if you watch that game,
he was not bad in that game.
He was good, and he like really locked down Peyton Sanford. I thought he was really great defensively. And I talked to NBA scouts after that game who told me that they thought more highly of him coming.
I was gonna say the people that I know that watch that game that I trust were like, no, he played well in that game.
Yeah, it's looking at a shooting percentage on one.
Exactly.
I think it was bad.
Yeah.
They also have a guard. They had a guard, Nate Calmezzi, who was like hero balling in that game because he made his first 5 shots. And so the offense got kind of out of whack. But anyway, Coward, like, I think your Bridges comp is like a very fun, good one. Bridges obviously had more like big game experience than Coward. But unlike Mikal Bridges, like Cedric Coward knows that you're allowed to make contact on either offense or defense with your opponent. Fair. So like the thing about him is this bully ball, this bully ball aspect to his game. And I think he obviously has benefited a little bit from being this sort of mystery guy because the dimensions stand out so much, the intangibles stand out so much. And you could say like, well, he wasn't exposed this year because he was at Washington State. They would have played more good teams. Maybe you say he would have been exposed. But if you go by this sort of efficiency usage axis where you haven't really found where it's fallen off yet, if he had a full season playing good teams, his true shooting in his 7 games was 70 this year. So if that had come down to 62, whatever, and he is this connective playmaker, bully ball, great defensive deflections guy who can do a little bit of everything on the floor and guard multiple positions, where would you take that player in the draft? And it's like, you could take him 4th. Like, there's
Keegan Murray went 4th. That was 2022, and he was a little bit younger than Coward, but not like enough that you would feel.
No, he was older.
Coward, because Coward is young for the class too. He's not even 22 yet, so like he's older, but he's not. Like
Keegan was a sophomore who was like turning 22.
I thought Keegan was 21 on draft night.
He might have turned 22 like after summer league around there, but in any event, they are like very, very close.
No, I know Coward's birthday is in September because it's literally 9/11, which is an incredible.
There you go.
He was born 2003, so they're basically the same age when they came in the NBA then.
Yeah,
because they were So, but long story short, he went with the 4th pick in the draft, and look, a lot of people killed that pick. Keegan's been fine. Obviously, there were bigger swings you probably could have took, but really the only player that you're mad that you didn't take was also an older prospect in J-Dub, who went 13 in that draft. And by the way, before you guys like gave me homework on J-Dub and basically told me to do a deep dive on him. I was seeing him in the Sixers range at 23. So anyone who says J-Dub should have went top 5 in that draft is completely doing, reworking it outside of you guys who told me like this guy should be a top 10 pick basically. So long story short, I think Coward's very worthy of a bet. The mystery box stuff does scare me a little bit, but I don't know. Everything comes back so positive with him when you talk to everyone that I can't see him being, I mean, at minimum a rotation wing, if not a fourth starter on a really good team in the future. Because I'm a little, I definitely agree with you. I don't necessarily trust the handle and creation stuff, but I think most of the stuff will just be created for him, and he'll have to extend those advantages, and he'll be fine.
You guys mentioned Carter Bryant earlier, and I think Carter, he will probably be drafted ahead of Cedric, would be my guess, based on, mocks and such.
Yeah, and he's younger.
Right, for like the usual reasons. He's younger, he had good defensive stats, played in a major conference, showed some shooting talent, shot well in high school. And that's great. Like, I like Carter. I do. He could be one of the top 10 players in this class. It could be there for him. But I trust Cedric as a scorer more than I trust Carter as a scorer.
I agree.
Like, if you were to say who is the worst projection off the dribble and as a creator, it's Carter, even though Carter is younger, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, I mean, he doesn't do that. That's been my whole thing, is why I've been a little bit lower on him than consensus throughout this process, is that, like, I just see a guy who, like, the best case scenario is that he's a fifth starter, in my opinion. And that's a very nice, useful thing to have, especially if he's really good on defense, and he definitely has the athleticism and the tools. And look, he's still 19. These guys usually suck when they're 19. The fact that he was able to impact the game at the level that he was, I think he's going to be an NBA player for sure. My whole thing is just like, I have to see a little bit more offensive anything with the ball. Even like, just, I know his role won't be that when he's younger, but like, if I'm taking him with where he's probably going to go in this draft, which is like the 9th or 10th pick of the draft, I would just like to see a little bit more in terms of offensive upside. Having said that, he's probably a pretty safe pick, and I have Coward on my board ahead of him because I just buy the offense a lot more.
Okay, guys, quick thought exercise. You're in the green room. You're looking at these 3 players. Who's the first one to leave? Is it Cedric Coward? Is it Carter Bryant? Or is it Liam McNeely?
I don't think does anyone have Liam McNeely in their top 20 here?
Somebody does, because he's going to the green room.
No, that's not true. Last year there were guys that didn't even get drafted.
There's rumors of a promise that are out there for Liam McNeely.
From
That's
who?
so insane, dude.
Can we guess? Sorry. Can we guess who this is?
Phoenix at 10.
I wish. That'd be hysterical.
You will see the funniest draft night streams of all
time.
I
would lose my mind. I would start
talking
like
who knows what smoke this time of year too. But
that's amazing smoke. Inviting a dart to the green room as smoke, just being like, this will throw everyone off the scent.
He's like been like top 20 projected all year, which is
I don't get
it. Seemed like for a minute everyone was gonna like look at the numbers for a minute, and then it just didn't happen. Like it seemed
that tournament game he had, dude,
disillusioned, and then
that tournament game he had, I was like, I'm out. Like, I was just like, I once again, I'm not overextending on one game, but it's the bigger picture with him for me. Which is that, like, it's not only that, but the numbers are also not good. Like, I'm just, yeah, no.
It's tough too, because UConn usually, like, is a rising tide.
Exactly.
And, like, the team was, like, absurdly loaded the last 2 years. So, I mean, there was a bit of a fall off, and he played kind of out of his role. But it's still... Yeah, I do not have in the top 20.
Liam has all the same technical problems as a driver that VJ Edgecombe has, but he's slower than I am. It's like the problem with
is
Liam
that good?
Like, yeah,
that's a good way to put it. Yeah,
he was so bad at the rim, and like I know he had like an ankle injury or whatever, but like even prior to that, I also think he's sort of like overrated as a passer because he's white. Like I actually thought his downhill his turnover numbers were pretty good, but I also thought his like downhill process was like weirdly kind of puzzling at times. Forces some bad stuff at the basket that he shouldn't. Like historically low stocks guy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I get this is like such a depressing comparison. I was talking to Will about this. I was like, I think that he's playable in the Jameson battle sense, and that like if you're just like a certain size and have a certain level of toughness,
Sure.
and you'll like take and make open threes, like you can just be on an NBA court.
That's
Right.
literally made George Niang into a 10-year NBA player.
Yes, like, and I think that is possible for him.
Yeah.
I just don't know how much more is.
Yeah.
And
you also have like the shooter curve where if you're not that great an athlete, but you can shoot, then you can be an NBA player at age 26. You just can't be an NBA player at age 20. You know?
Yeah, and it's also the thing of like, if you pick him in the first round, like that pick is like it's like driving a car off the lot. Right. Like you're not going to be able to trade him for a first again. It's like the thing that like Corey Kispert runs into, where it's like I don't want to trade a first for Corey Kispert. Like everyone's like, I'll give you 2 seconds for Corey Kispert. Like it's one of those things where it's just
Kispert, Şengün, Trey Murphy, 15, 16, 17.
Yeah, it's just tough. It's tough.
Washington took a beating during those drafts. Those Tommy Shepard drafts, 2021, 2022 was just a really tough stretch for that because J-Dub went literally 2 picks later, I think, after Johnny Davis.
Yep.
It's a tough look. So yeah, Sam, what is your? Can you just read off your board for me a little bit so we can catch up to where I'm at? Because I just read up to pick 12 for me.
Cooper Flagg, Trey Johnson, VJ Edgecombe,
Mm-hmm.
Dylan Harper. I mean, I know we're not talking about Dylan Harper, but I continue to be like, are we sure Dylan Harper's better than the next tier of guys? Is my whole
I agree.
Yeah. And then Malawach 5, Con 6, Ace 7. I have Carter Bryant 8 for the reason I understand the arguments against Carter Bryant. I will say Carter Bryant passes one of my big tests, which is the Arizona fans in my life were like, you don't understand. Our coach is the biggest moron on the face of the planet. Like this guy is, I swear this guy is good.
A fan
like,
base
every
who
time
doesn't like
plays,
his coach. That's hard to believe. Anyway,
I'm just saying like the reasons, because I think the other big knock about Carter Bryant is he didn't play, right? He played like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Patrick Williams, we talked
so
about
much
that
better with him on the court.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is I've been told by Arizona fans that's like mostly bunk.
There's no argument that Carter Bryant isn't going to have a 10-year NBA career. We all agree with that.
I just think, level defender. I think he's a solid bet to like shoot well and everything. But anyway, and then I have Derek Queen 9, Sorber 10, and then we're starting to leave the range.
Can I ask for a Derek Queen sales pitch? Because I feel like I've been lower on him, and I like
let Chuck do this.
He's another guy that I'm like scared of, and I want to talk to Chuck about him because I know Chuck likes him a lot. And like I saw him play against Northwestern, and I just had such a hard time with how he struggled against like Brooks Barnhizer and that really slow dude Nicholson.
Well, let's talk about superstar names, alliteration, just like Shaden Sharp, Brooks Barnhizer.
By the way, quick before you go on this pitch here, Chuck, I think that Derek Queen is probably going to be the guy that falls in this draft. Like that seems like the general feel. End of
I think the combine cost him money for sure.
Yeah. So I just wanted to where I have him right now is I have him at 9 because of the reasons Chuck will lay out in a second, but I could see him going anywhere from like 12 to like 17. So that's the kind of range I think we're talking about with him.
Yeah, so, and like that's where I feel comfortable with him. Like I think he's an interesting sort of like creation that I just think between like the ground coverage, the fact that he still turns it over a ton, like it's another just like on ball guy where, and I really did not like, I don't buy the shot as much as I feel like I should with him. Mm-hmm. I think the defense is just always going to be a problem in terms of covering ground and whatever. Like I like him on an island and switches. I think he does well in those scenarios. He's also the best at intercepting pocket passes of like any guy I can remember scouting. But I'm just at a loss for what this player does. And it feels like a lot of times even the high end versions of this guy are complicated from a team building standpoint. So give me
I will say, then are you similarly like relatively low on Wolf? For a lot of the same reasons.
So I actually have Wolf higher.
I was going to say you like.
Okay, all right. I'm glad we got to this preface. Okay, because I like both of them because in terms of things that kind of works in the NBA, just like extremely large players who can handle the ball will draw defensive attention, regardless of whether they should bite on a pump fake or care that someone has the ball. If you can dribble and you take 2 dribbles towards the rim, help is going to come from somewhere. And I think both of those guys regardless of how you defend them, will be able to take advantage of gravity coming their way, which gives them like a base. Number one. I think in terms of the stuff this year, Maxwell, would you feel differently if, because Maryland lost, I think 7 games, right? And like 4 were on buzzer beaters, something
Yeah, they played
like
a lot
that.
of games. Yep.
So if that had evened out a little bit and they'd lost 4 games all year and they were a 2 seed and like Derek was their best player, then do you think that like even that would have him a little higher in your mind as like a freshman best player on a 2 seed?
Not particularly. I think part of that too is I'm like a really big Jacoby Gillespie guy.
He's
like,
good. Team's good for sure.
Loki, a dude. Yeah, I think knowing that throughout the year, yeah, it doesn't like completely change things for
And
me.
this is so interesting because we potted about Cedric Howard and Derek Queen before the season started, and like you were like big Derek Queen guy.
Yeah, I love Derek Queen. I like want Derek Queen to succeed because he rocks. Like
everyone
so
loves Derek Queen. No one is rooting against Derek Queen, but the red flags are certainly there.
So this was in conference play, I guess February on. So from February on, I'm just going to read off some numbers. I'll even leave the passing dimension out of it. Okay. Mm-hmm. There's just points and rebounds. I feel like this is a real Simmons coded thing of reading box scores. 13-8, 29-15, 24-11, 18-13, 13-17, 10-10, 23-6, 17-12, 10-10, 19-10, 31-3, 12-15, 17-6, 27-5. Those were his numbers from February through the tourney. And I would think that if you are skeptical about him, part of it is like, does he make plays out of his area? How does he cover ground? Mm-hmm. And I just think that he has a baseline of being very talented when he is within arm's reach of the ball. I think it's very fair to be skeptical of his ability to like do all of the role player stuff of like being, I don't even know, like a really good gap filler.
Also, screen setting is one thing that it feels like he didn't show. Like it was like he would ghost every single screen, which I don't really care if you're like a shooter, but like if you're big, like I would like to see a little bit of just like a legit level of setting screens, especially because that's probably going to be part of your role in the NBA.
But as Maxwell pointed out, he's a very good deflections guy on pocket passes, and I think if you believe he's going to not get in better shape in the NBA, which I believe he will because he'll have to. But I just think that he has so much talent as a driver and as a shot maker. And even if he's not like doesn't have great lift or whatever, he knows how to position himself for rebounds and he has great hands and he can shoot free throws. And like, I think he is the most talented player with the ball in his hands over 6'7" after Cooper Flagg in the draft. So there are lots of other like nits to pick for sure. He's not a perfect player by any stretch, but like his driving numbers, like the advanced numbers on his driving are really, really good. Like his scoring numbers and his efficiency numbers. So if you were to, and he is like the rare big guy who can like fuck with a defender's timing on a drive. It's not just like brute force. He has like a little bit of a bag and he can outthink people. And like being able to outthink people and bully them, you just don't see it. Like I bet very big every single draft on guys that I think stick out relative to other draft classes. And that's what Derek definitely does that. It is going to be weird and team building is going to be like an adventure. But if you're the Wizards, your team building is already an adventure. So like, and you need someone to be a real hub who can like make shots easier for other people. I would much rather like rein in Derek's audacity and like get him in shape and everything than try to like hope that Ace Bailey like learns how to create easy shots because he's not going to. So like
they're probably going to take it 6 too if he's on the board. So
and that's what I'm saying. Like I watch Rutgers play Maryland, and Maryland has a better team to
for sure
Maxwell's point. But like Ace, and Derek's almost 2 years older than Ace, so it's not like entirely fair.
That's
but
the other thing I think with Derek that I think like
he's already 20, right?
Is it? Yeah, he's a freshman, and him and Danny Wolf are like 7 months apart.
My favorite thing about Queen though is someone pointed this fact out, and he quote tweeted it and he apologized, which was the funniest thing
like,
I've ever seen from a prospect. I love this guy.
I know. Funny. Yeah.
Ace looked like a small boy next to him, and like part of Ace's appeal is that he's like this wing who's going to like win physical battles at the NBA, and maybe he will. Maybe he'll grow into his body and whatever. But like being able to impose your strength and dribble the ball and make shots, I just will bet on it every single year. And so even if it looks weird, I still really trust that he's going to be able to get buckets, stuff box scores, and like make these plays again within arm's reach of the ball, tipping rebounds to himself, deflecting passes, positioning, doing like weird Jokic rebound rim protector shit where he like fakes like he's going to jump so he can get in position for the defensive rebound. Derek's going to be able to do all that kind of stuff. Obviously, his ceiling is not Jokic. But like any sort of like whisper of feel that good is something else to just really bet on to me. Especially in this class where you're comparing him to a bunch of guards who don't have ideal size or ideal athleticism. So that's where it comes from.
2 things that will unlock Derek Queen for me. The transition stuff is very interesting to me, just as a guy who gets out and can actually make like outlet passes and make the right reads in transition is very interesting. If he's able to ever get a rebound and push the pace, I'm very interested in that. And then 2, obviously the passing and playmaking, which we saw glimpses of, but it wasn't, obviously they played double bigs. Is he going to play a double big lineups in the NBA? What does that look like? I do believe in the passing and the playmaking for sure. Just from the little bit that I've seen, I definitely think that he will be a good decision maker with the ball. He will be a very good driver, ambidextrous. He finishes really well around the basket. I don't think the free throw rate is going to translate 1 for 1, but sometimes you get that he's a monster at the free throw rate stuff. The other thing that I just want to point out here that after we had our conversation on that website Data Baller that went up a few weeks ago, I know on-off stuff is really wonky with college guys. I know it's like not great, and there are certain guys that are like we talked about with Fears a little bit earlier. They were just as good with him on and off and blah, blah, blah. Trey Johnson, somewhat similar. VJ, actually, I think they were a little bit better with him off offensively. Derek Queen, when he was on the court, they had almost a 126 offensive rating, 125.8. When he was off, I know that they ran bench units a lot. I've talked to some Maryland people who were like, we had one of the worst benches. They played a lot of bench units.
Really bad.
It was really bad. I'm aware of that. But they had a 109.3 offensive rating. So that's a plus 16.5 swing with Queen on offensively. And their defense was even better. It was a 92 defensive rating with a 95 defensive rating with him off. So if you are going to make the pitch that Queen is like an outlier, I think that there is an argument to be made that he could be the guy that we look back on in a few years and be like, oh, wow, how did he fall to 17? Because it feels like he has a lot of traits. Like in a draft class that I don't feel super confident about everyone, that's kind of why I ended up moving him up my board. Although I see both, he's firmly in my boomer bust here as like, I can see both sides of the argument for sure. So
I was lower on him than he showed up to the draft out of shape. Alpha move. That is a star prospect move. To walk in there,
Shaq, Jokic, Embiid,
make the draft about you, King. That is absolutely
Zion.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
The absolute case. So I'll be the vibes input guy here. My line on Queen all year is I think he's gonna be a terrible NBA pro, but I'm like rooting for him. But like I've become addicted to Chuck's propaganda via his soldier Trill. So like having to like listen to Trill do this. So I have started being like, you can
talk me into anyone. If you get me in a room, like me and Chuck met up, we went to go grab some coffee when he was here in Philly, and by the end of that conversation, I think I changed my opinion on two people. I'm very gullible and I'm very like easily talked into players. You're talking about a guy who talked himself into, after years of hating on DeJounte Murray. For years, I was like, I don't like this guy. He stinks. And then the Sixers might trade for him, and in 3 weeks I was like, he's my guy. And then they obviously didn't trade for him, and it ended up working out better. So, well, who's to say better? Both ended up bad. But so yeah, I have just reading off my end of lottery here. After I had Queen at 9, obviously Coward was the last one I had at 12. Then I have Kasparas Yakuchonis at 13, Nick Clifford at 14, Carter Bryant at 15, Walter Clayton at 16, Jace Richardson 17, Danny Wolf 18, Rasheer Fleming 19, Ryan Kalkbrenner 20, Thero 21. So yeah, those are like up to that. Like Thero is like the last guy where I'm like, I'm intrigued.
Yeah,
I'm very intrigued by him. Thero, I'm sorry. Thero is the last guy that I'm like, I see something here for sure, but I know that he has a weird story. We've talked about the growth spurt. We've talked about, the fact that he was 5'9" in high school, and now he's grown to be like 6'6". And all the stuff that Chuck talked about earlier, I agree with what he was saying. The shooting stuff is like, at what point does that come around is really the question for me with him. He could be a steal at the end of the first, beginning of the second, if the shooting does come around with him, though, for sure. Can we talk about before we get out of here, because I've been holding you guys way too long here. I want to do one thing on Walter Clayton.
Yeah, baby.
Underrated ceiling guy. Where do you have him on your board, Chuck?
Like 12, 13, right there.
I have him. Yeah. I have him just outside my lottery right now. But do you buy underrated ceiling Maxwell, or do you just think good bench guard?
I think most likely good bench guard. Like I think if you look at just like bench guards that play in the playoffs, it's like he's coming in way better than Ty Jerome did. You know what I mean? And it's like Ty Jerome like can give you some good stuff. He'll get up on the ball, he'll knock down threes, make good decisions. Like Clayton can do all that stuff and more. Like I think he's a good bet to be that. But I do think between the late bloomer stuff, the fact that he wasn't solely dedicated to basketball until later on in life, the fact that he just gets leaps and bounds better, the fact that he's really high character. He has the sort of like quintessential small guard body type where he's just like bulky and strong. And like when he jumps into bigs, they move backwards. Like I just love that element of him and like the physicality, the toughness, the character. Like I think he does have a much better shot of over punching that weight than like a standard guard that's older that you would see projected in this sort of range.
Yeah. He's also like one of the 3 best shooters in the draft.
Yeah,
like it's him, Con, and Trey. So
yeah. And the shot is like somehow underrated, but like he's always been like an unreal free throw shooter. The 3-point volume has always been off the charts, and he's also like crucially a really great pull up guy. And like with like thrive in early offense. Yeah, like he's one of those guys. Like if you don't pick him up in early offense, he's just going to pull from 30 and hit it. Like
no, he's
like, it's pretty rare to be able to do that and still have like that body, as reductive as it sounds. Like usually those guys are kind of twerpy and he's not.
No, I think his name's Eli, the economist on Twitter, did a whole thread on this about like the power that he generates from long range at his size with his build is kind of nuts. Like, I mean, like he can shoot from pretty much anywhere, high level of difficulty. I think he's going to be able to run a pick and roll in the NBA. And I think that I really do think there's like once again, I have him lower on my board because I think it's a real outlier. But if you look at the guards who, like you said, developed late, the CJ McCollums, the Damian Lillards, the Jalen Brunsons, I know that they're all varying levels of different than Walter Clayton, but there's a world. I'm not saying that it's necessarily the world we live in. I just think that there is a pathway for him to become a really high level NBA player. And I hope that is the case for him. He's one of my 4 or 5 favorite prospects in the draft, I think.
Yeah. I love him. I agree. Yeah. He like I would imagine that drafting him, if he is the shooter that we think he is, like he's just why would a team not re-sign him? So if he's already sort of like a second contract guy because he's athletic enough to at least survive and he's that good a shooter, then that immediately would put him probably in the top 15 in the draft or thereabouts.
I think other than Coward, I think that there's an argument that like, I think if these guys all are who we think they are, other than Flag, obviously, at the top of the draft, like there's an argument that Coward and Clayton could come in and be pretty instant impact rookies. Like I could see both of them playing in the playoffs next year.
Well, and that's like you start to drive yourself crazy with this stuff because you're like, who's the better current basketball player, Walter Clayton or VJ Edgecombe? And you're like, well, I mean, right now,
sure.
And then you're like, well, will VJ ever be 80% of the shooter Walter Clayton is now? And you're like, oh, probably not. Like, yeah, like you start to go crazy. You know, you can.
I've been looking at it too long.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm starting to get that way too, where I'm like, the closer I get to the draft, the more I'm like, let's just take a step back. I'm trying to take the day off tomorrow so we can prep for the actual draft night stream, but we'll see how that goes. Last thing I need from both of you, someone outside of the top 20. You could be late first, it could be second, it could be a sleeper, a guy that you just think is going to be like a clear NBA player, like a hidden gem in this draft.
You want to go, Maxwell?
Sure, I'll go first. I think Janai Broome is good. Like
he will be the 35th pick in the draft by the Philadelphia 76ers. Let's just get ahead of that.
I just did that.
I'm telling you, they're going to take him. Like that has Morey pick written all over it.
He's the classic, like, well, he's older and I don't quite know what he is, like guy that just ends up being good. Like he is a stellar rebounder, really good, just shot blocker. His instincts are off the charts. I think you can get him to a point where like he's a safety valve 3-point shooter. And I think he's like a genius level passer. Like it is very, very, very rare for a big man to have an assist rate that high and such a low turnover rate. And I just think he's going to beast teams out of the short roll. Like I know there's a lot of like, well, how is he going to score in the NBA questions? And I don't think those are unwarranted. But I think when you have a guy who's like coming into the league that great as a decision maker and you can surround him with shooters and like have him be the fifth option on the floor, that's going to get way easier for him. Like I think Janai Broome is going to eat. I think teams are getting way too cute with the idea of like, well, is he going to adapt his play style properly? Like I just take him, draft the guy.
Take the basketball player. I agree with you that we always overthink that, but I understand why these guys end up going into the first, beginning of the second.
But
someone said
love him there.
Someone said Suns at 29. I think that's also a possibility if they don't move up for Jace or if he's on the board. We literally mocked him in the draft to them. I don't remember. Did he play well against Michigan State? I think he did in the tournament game. I watched that game. I should know. But either way, does it
he had a million injuries late too.
Okay, but the reason I'm saying this is that that is a big factor in Matt Ishbia's scouting, if he played well against Michigan State or not. Because we heard that they're out on Derek Queen at 10, and then Ethan in the Discord looked up Derek Queen's stats against Michigan State, and he went 2 of 11 from the field. So that would tell you why the Suns are not interested in Derek Queen. But I do
Simmons coded. We love it. You know?
I'm telling you, it's crucial. It's crucial. They have
25 and 14 against Michigan State.
Yep, he's going 29. Fuck. He's going. I was hoping he fell to 35 because I liked him as like a bench big 4 or 5.
I love the idea of him in Philly because like you can play him double big with Embiid because Embiid will shoot, and like there's just so much shooting around him that you short roll him, and like he's got shooters everywhere. He's got Grimes, Maxey, McCain. Like
that's like that's like one of like my I would be happy with that outcome in the second round. My dream is that my unrealistic dream is that we use the future Clippers picks and we trade back into the lottery at the end of the lottery and draft Colin Murray Boyles if he falls. That's like number 1 for me. I don't think that's going to happen, but Daryl Morey is desperate to save his job. You never know. 2 is that Rasheer Fleming falls to the end of the first, beginning of the second, and then we trade up a little bit to get him. So those are the outcomes I would like at the end of the first, beginning of the second. Chuck, who is your guy that you already talked about? Thero a little bit. Who else is out there for you?
I'll shout out Jameer Watkins.
I heard you talk about him before. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I thought he should have gone last year, frankly, but I guess he got enough money to come back. But we started out, at least when I popped on, we were talking about those switchblade types, Drew, Derek White, whatever. Like in terms of an older guy that has the athleticism to contain, switch, rim protect, and who has experience as a facilitator, so that he knows a little bit about what he's doing in a secondary pick and roll situation and can attack a closeout. Like Jameer checks all those boxes. He is where he is because the jumper's always been kind of inconsistent and he doesn't really have an in-between game. It's not the most important thing in the world to have an in-between game if you're going to be a 4th through 7th guy. and his catch and shoot numbers from 3 have been good, like clearly good. So I would say, like, I don't know. Yeah, Maxwell, would you agree he's one of like the 10 best athletes in the draft overall?
Yeah. And like there was a stat a couple years back, like it's been different since he's been like the lead guy at Florida State. And it might have been back in this territory this year where he guarded like 23 isolation possessions and allowed like 10 points on him, or like something comical where like when he can lock into that on-ball D role too, like I think he's way better than people realize. And he's always been good off the ball. Like the stock numbers have been there kind of regardless of the role. And yeah, to Chuck's point, like the catch and shoot stuff has been there. And just the other day I was like messing around, just being like, who were like recent second round picks that have been good? And I was like doing queries on like Aaron Wiggins and like guys like that.
Najee Marshall was one of them.
Like, and like I just kept getting Jameer Watkins. Like when I'd plug in like their numbers to Bart Torvik. Like this combination of like usage, being able to facilitate, taking threes, and having some defensive playmaking tends to bode really well in the second round.
Yeah, I would say him. I also think RJ Lewis doesn't suck. I will say that. I can see why people do think he sucks, but I think he does not suck. So a less passionate case.
That's the guy from St. John's, right?
Yeah, the one who like Rick Pitino's like, he's my guy, and then benched him in the last 5 minutes of the game against Arkansas.
Just last little shout before we get out of here. Jameer Watkins, 23 going on 24. I don't really care about that if you're drafting him in the second round. You're just looking for NBA players at that point. He is from Trenton. The Sixers tend to look for guys that have like local roots sometimes. We got Justin Edwards last year. It's something to keep in mind either at pick 35 or maybe even as an undrafted free agent potentially. So
the thing with age to me is that like the most common reason people aren't in the NBA by age 23 or 24 or whatever is that they're not athletic enough and they've just never been athletic enough. And that is so not the case with Jameer Watkins. He was
Once
an
I
NBA
get out
athlete.
of the lottery, I don't really care. Yeah,
he was an NBA athlete 3 years ago. So like, he has a real chance. I will say.
And I think as NIL like continues, like we're just gonna have to get over that idea too.
Exactly.
Like it's gonna be the norm.
Yep. Yeah. Sam will take Yaxel with the 3rd pick in next year's draft. Anyway, continue.
Yaxel's so good.
I mean, I will. I'm devastated he didn't come out. I haven't felt this bad about a guy going back since Willie Cauley-Stein did it when I had him.
Harrison Barnes didn't do it for you?
Yeah, I was tough.
Marcus Smart? Oh my God, come on.
So just one last thing, I'll make it really quick. My guy in this draft really, we talked about like Malawach and Khan. Another really deep Duke guy I'm looking at. He's actually from Maine. Cooper Flagg in this draft. This is someone you want to keep an eye on, okay?
I thought you were going to say Sion James. I was like, yeah, man, totally.
Yeah, I like Sion too. Yeah.
No.
I've got him in my late first.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Cooper Flagg, I think this guy could be an NBA player. So I'm keeping my eye on him, as an undrafted guy.
I prefer Ace personally as a hooper. I prefer Ace Flagg, not Ace Bailey. I just wanted to
Ace Flagg. Okay.
Yeah, if you switched their teams that they were on, it's hard to imagine that Ace wouldn't have been the best player of the last 10 years.
Exactly. Yeah. No, Paul George told me on the podcast. So yeah. All right. Once again, one of my favorite podcasts that we do every year, Chuck and Maxwell. Thank you for taking the time. I really, really appreciate it. Go follow both of them. Chucking Darts podcast, Maxwell on No Ceilings, Draft Sickos. Both great listens. I'm sure Maxwell will be publishing a lot in the next few days, writing wise as well. So follow him on Twitter. All the links will be in the description here. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, fellas.
Peace.
Peace.